Hey, freeloaders! Yeah, you weren't expecting this, were you? This is what we're going to do. We're just going to pop these bad boys out every now and then. You guys will think it's an off week, and then boom, a Freeloader series hits your feed. You're welcome. Those rusted-on patrons might get upset about it, but it's okay, because we love them too, and they got a new episode today as well. So everybody gets a new episode, right? Everyone's happy. Don't get mad because someone else gets something when you get something, because you think they're undeserving. It's okay. This is like over almost 2 years. So it's a pretty old episode. This episode is actually one of Lauren's favorites, obviously, right? Because it has wrestling. If you guys don't know, Lauren is big into jiu-jitsu, and he loved this case very much, and for obvious reasons. It's an inspiring case, but it's also a case of heartbreak and disaster, like many of the cases that we cover here. We watched a documentary called Foxcatcher, which I think we will briefly talk about. Highly recommend watching that documentary. You don't have to watch it before you listen to this episode. I don't think that's going to really matter. But I think once you listen to this episode, it'll be really helpful to put faces to names and to fully grasp this story, this horrible tragedy that happened to probably one of the greatest people that we've covered. So without further ado, guys, here's Freeloader series, episode 11. All right, guys, we'll see you on the other side.
Yeah, this case, Team Foxcatcher was the documentary we watched on Netflix. Phenomenal documentary. There's a film I'm sure you've heard of. What year did that come out?
I don't know. Let me check it out.
It's called Foxcatcher. It's got Steve Carell. We love The Office here. It's also got the very attractive Channing Tatum.
Right.
And who was it that played Dave again? I forget the actor's name. He's a really good actor. Anyways, yeah, that film, if you've seen that, it's
2014.
2014, Foxcatcher. Who was the actor that played Dave again? It was
Mark Ruffalo?
Yeah, Mark Ruffalo.
Yep.
The acting in it was phenomenal. The actors trained in wrestling with top-notch wrestlers to get ready for this. Mark Shultz actually trained Channing to get ready for this. That's why he looked like a legit wrestler in this movie.
Nice. He's a pretty athletic dude anyways, though. I'm sure it wasn't much for him to kind of get into that mindset.
He probably wrestled
He's
in high school.
taller than Mark, though, isn't he? Channing Tatum's a big dude.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's over 6 feet.
I don't think that the Shultz brothers were that tall, were they?
Yeah, but height, I mean, they can
it doesn't really matter,
adjust that in film.
Yeah.
They make Tom Cruise look tall and everything. He's a midget, basically.
Oh.
Well, a little person, sorry.
Good to know. Wow, how dare you?
That just came right out.
Right?
Like, oh, I don't think that's proper. If you're a little person listening to this, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize. I will use the proper terminology. I don't even know if they like that anymore.
I don't know, man.
I forget, man. It's
the climate,
every day.
Man. The climate,
man. It's
the
hot.
climate out here. We don't know what to say.
It's only like 68 degrees in here, but it feels really hot right now all of a sudden.
Yeah. I don't think you can say like
since
sex
I dropped that
workers
M-bomb.
I don't know.
The M-bomb.
Can't say prostitutes anymore?
Yeah, it's
Can't
sex
say
workers.
gypsy?
Can't say gypsy?
I don't think so, man. I heard that shit.
Man.
Yeah.
We need an email feed that lets us know proper words every day. That you can't say this one anymore.
They let us know on Twitter.
Right. Twitter, that's right. Twitter is that one. But you have to say it for them to have to correct you.
Yeah.
You've already fucked up at that
Then
point.
we ignore it.
Yeah, it's like I need ahead of time knowledge.
Yeah, we live out in the boonies, okay? We don't know what's going on.
Yeah. We don't mean to offend, guys.
Right. It's all about intent, seriously.
I really think that context and intent for sure.
Because all of you have those friends that you can say whatever you want to, and you know that they're gonna.
You can send them memes to, and
they're gonna take it in stride
Yep.
because they know that your intent is not malicious.
Exactly.
And that is how we should treat everybody.
You wouldn't send those same things or say those same things to a person you just met,
Right. You can't.
for fear that they wouldn't understand where you're coming from.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly. And you don't have time to describe your intent to everyone, but
That's
you know
what.
how
Yeah.
it is. That's the problem. Is that people don't want to take the time to look at it from a different point of view. Like, oh, maybe they didn't mean to be hurtful. Maybe that's just the term that they've heard their whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all. That's how they said it.
I don't know, man. Going down a rabbit hole here.
Super
It's
rabbit.
a dangerous one.
That's right. We should get
It's a rabbit hole that's got like a fucking viper in it.
or like a fox at the end.
Foxcatcher?
Yeah.
Is that what we're going to catch it?
Oh, not if we're rabbits.
So back around in a lovely way to this case.
Nice segue.
Yeah, so do you want to drop the intro and we'll get into this? It's got wrestling. It's got mighty.
Heck yeah, let's do it.
It's got a trust fund baby boy, as you talked about in your
That's right.
podcast.
Mr. DuPont.
Mr. DuPont.
All right, let's fire this thing
Let's
up.
do this.
I want you to try something. This is good for you heavyweights too. Instead of shooting your head to his leg, you're going to shoot your head. I'm just showing you a variation. There's 100 different ways to do wrestling moves. This is just a little different way. I'm showing you different ways so you can play with it. Okay, now this time, make sure to do this with your neck. Okay, and you're going to try and put your head right there. See that spot right there? And now, it's called a run-in double. Now you're here, he reaches, right there, see that? Right there. Now, what it does is it knocks the guy back, and it's real easy to finish this hold, because you just grab his legs and push.
People always ask me, well, haven't you had to sacrifice a lot? You know, I didn't have hardly a social life in high school outside of my wrestling group. But to me, it's not sacrifice. It's just a choice. Anything you want to do, I'm not wrestling for any reason other than I want to wrestle. So I'm doing what I want to do.
Hi, my name is John DuPont. Welcome to Foxcatcher Farm. It's just the idea that you're out alone with no telephones, no one bothering you. You can relax for a few moments and hopefully catch a fish and have some fun to go along with it. Fishing has been a lifelong hobby of mine ever since I was a kid growing up on the farm. Oh, got a fish. Oh, got away. I had the opportunity to fish as a kid. I just followed through with it. I'm not the best fisherman in the world, but I have a lot more fun than a lot of my other fishing friends in this world who think they're supposedly experts. Sometimes the fish cooperate, sometimes they don't. My technique for catching fish is very simple. I take my athletic tenacity, apply it against the fish, and make it fierce competition. Except there's one catch to it. I win, they lose. I win, they lose.
All right, so for you patrons, we got a special case, one that I've been wanting to do for a while, man. I've always loved this case because of the documentary on Netflix called Team Foxcatcher. I've gotten sucked into watching it and just love that documentary. And
You watched it a few times, haven't you?
I've watched it like 5-6 times. I don't know what it is about it. I just really resonate with Dave Shultz, who's the victim in this case. You just feel like through that documentary you get to know him, you know. And I also I really enjoy the sport of wrestling. Not that I did it, but like I respect wrestlers. Like I think it's a badass sport. Like the dudes that are in it are tough, like truly tough guys.
Absolutely.
And like Dave just seemed like he was like the most likable dude ever. Everybody says the same thing. He just had an aura about him.
He really did. And I think a lot of those videos speak for themselves.
Yeah.
You saw him helping people and raising his kids and spending time with his kids. He looked like he had a well-balanced life too.
Yes.
He seems like he did everything right.
Definitely. He was he didn't like to dress fancy. He just kind of wore whatever he wore, and he was goofy and he was never serious, and like, but yet on the mat he was an absolute animal. One of the best wrestlers in the world. But you would never know. If you see him walk around, he just like
No.
seemed like this jovial, like
Not a
silly
big guy either.
Not
Like
a
he
big
took
guy.
down most of the
They
guys.
said he looked
took
like
down.
he looked like a chemistry teacher or something, like a professor. Like
He did.
Did not.
He looked like a fit professor, to be fair. But
Yeah.
he didn't look. He wasn't as big as the wrestlers, though.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys.
He had that goon.
And he's
walk,
all
though.
hairy as
He had
hell.
he
He's
had
like a fucking werewolf.
He had that goon walk though, the Dan Henderson like goon walk where you're like
Yep.
stiff, like kind of
Yeah.
walking around like a crow. Like
Yeah.
yeah,
But it's part of his charm, though.
Yeah.
Because he always had that grin on his face.
yeah.
So it was like it
Because he
wasn't.
knew he could fuck everyone in the world up. That's part of that grin is like, hey, I'm gonna be silly with you because like I could kick your ass for sure.
I don't know. Or maybe he didn't want to be known by that. You know,
Yeah,
I
that's
thought about it before. And you see, like when you see a bodybuilder or somebody out in public,
Yeah.
it's almost like being a celebrity. It's like you don't get any peace, and also you don't have anything else that people identify you with.
Yeah, they assume you're dumb. Like you're
Exactly. Once you get that big or you get that profound in a sport or in in changing your body or whatever it is, people they only see that outward look, and then they don't think that, oh, maybe he's funny or shit, or maybe he's charismatic, or maybe he's smart.
Dude, honestly,
especially
a lot
not
of times,
smart.
A lot of times,
They-
like
you don't get that.
meatheads are some of the funniest dudes you'll ever meet. A lot of them are
Yeah.
fucking hilarious.
Yeah. And
You
they're
know,
more
because they've
intelligent.
grown up in that environment, like the locker room environment, like wrestlers.
Yeah.
Funny dudes because like it was no holds barred. Like they would wrestle their ass off, beat each other up, but then it was all jokes after that. You know,
Right.
like Rampage Jackson in the UFC, formerly in the UFC, but one of the most famous fighters from the UFC is one of the funniest dudes ever.
I bet.
There's a lot of dudes that come from that environment, and it's that locker room talk is like this makes them into hilarious people.
It
Like,
makes
a
you
lot of
quick on your feet.
yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
people that video game a lot and talk shit on Xbox Live and stuff are also really funny too because it's just like you're verbal sparring constantly.
Yes.
You know, you're always arguing.
You
with
become
people.
quicker and quicker
Yep.
with the comebacks.
Yeah. So we watched the film Foxcatcher. We watched the documentary we
Mm-hmm.
keep raving about, which I've cried pretty much every time I've watched it. The end of that documentary is so sad.
Right.
When it's like
It really is. I
they're
cry
talking
too,
to,
man.
They're talking to Dave's family, like his wife and his kids are like, I never really got to know my dad because he was taken too early. And
Dude, and then you see that
terrible.
video at the end of him laying on the hammock with
yeah.
his
Yeah,
son and
God,
daughter.
That part gets me that's when that's when the tears come. Man.
And you can tell they're so happy.
Right.
Like everything is just perfect.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it kills me, dude. Yeah.
And we also
So
read
the
a book.
Yeah, we got the book written by his brother Mark Schultz, who is also one of the greatest wrestlers of all time as well.
Yes, co-written with Mark Shultz with also a man named David Thomas.
But it was in his words, so I'm guessing Mark
Yeah,
told the
right.
stories, and then this guy wrote the actual because Mark wasn't necessarily a writer.
And this book, guys, I guess Mark felt like he had to do it because he's not represented in other resources. But in this book, I mean, it's all Mark, is it not?
yeah, it is.
I was like, dude, what about Dave?
Yeah, that's what I told Michael because I'd seen the doc.
Yeah.
It's a Netflix original documentary.
Yeah, see, I
called
read the
Team
book
Foxcatcher.
first.
Yeah, and I was like, he was like, "There's no Dave in it." I'm
Yeah.
like, "Watch the documentary because the documentary is all Dave."
Right. And no Mark.
Right.
Dude, did they even say Mark's name? Is he even in one of the interview people? Is he one of the...
No, he's not in it.
He's not in it
He's
at
not
all,
in
is
it.
he?
Mark Schultz is not in it. No, it's a lot of wrestlers that Dave was with on Team Foxcatcher.
Yeah.
There's no Mark Schultz in it.
Now, to
But
be
he's
fair...
a strange cat though. Like he's out there. Like when the movie came out, the film Foxcatcher with Steve Carell and all them,
Yeah.
he was riding hard for it. Like when it first came out, he was doing all these interviews and like I don't know if they paid him or what, but he was
Right.
like saying how great this film is and how realistic it is and everything. Yeah. A month later, he comes out and threatens the director and saying he's going to kill the director and how they portrayed him to be a homosexual.
Right. Now, Lauren's not talking about... You're not talking about the documentary right now. You're talking about the movie with Channing Tatum.
The film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what Mark was...
But I'm just saying, I'm just basically giving some examples of Mark being a little bit like he's kind of back and forth. He goes through bouts of like psychosis or something. Like he's I'm sure he's had a lot of head trauma. You know, we're going to go through his and his brother's childhoods. But yeah, so the book that we got was by Mark Schultz and his co-writer.
Yeah.
It was called Foxcatcher, The True Story of My Brother's Murder, John DuPont's Madness, and the Quest for Olympic Gold. And so this is the book that we got. We got it on
I would like to
Audible.
retitle it Foxcatcher, The True Story of Mark Schultz's Wrestling Career. Am I wrong?
It's like,
Dude,
I don't know how
come
many
on.
chapters is it?
It's like
Let's-
20 chapters.
for-
15 of them are his wrestling
I was
career.
gonna say, if it's 20 chapters, then like 18 are like wrestling matches that he had,
At
and
least.
then 2 of them are like one's their childhood and one's the murder.
Oh my god, so much unnecessary shit.
There's
like
a-
stuff about like his diet and his nutrition. It's like, oh, I gotta cut weight. I'm like, Mark, get to the fucking point, bro.
Well, if
What is
you're really-
Dave doing right now?
If you were a high school wrestler and you still enjoy that sport, or if you're just a fan of
The book is for a fan of wrestling.
Olympic wrestling or catch wrestling or any collegiate wrestling,
Right.
You'll enjoy it because it's a lot. It goes deep, nerdy shit with wrestling.
Yes, a lot of technique talk, things like that.
Yes. Yeah. So there's a lot of that. But yeah, obviously we had multiple resources, so we didn't just rely entirely on the book.
Thank God.
But a lot of this timeline is based off the book. But I tried to keep there's not too much of the nerdy wrestling stuff in there.
Right.
There's just enough.
Yeah.
Because you do. I mean, that's what they were as human beings. They were.
You have to be
That's
to be
what they
that
spent
good,
their
dude.
entire life doing.
You have to be a quote unquote
get to the
nerd about
Olympics-
something to be good at it. Period.
To get to that level where you're wrestling in the Olympics, it's been your life. Like there's no other way.
Yeah, you're not going to make it, especially not being in the U.S. It's not like Russia at the
Yeah.
time where they had way more resources and
That's really like kind of the whole thing to this story. Is
Exactly.
if America would have supported their wrestlers properly, this never would have happened. It was
All
a
about
very
that money,
unfortunate
bro.
thing where wrestlers did what they had to do. They crossed paths with a creepy guy named John DuPont,
Mm-hmm.
who inherited a whole lot of money when he was born and just seemed to take a liking to sports and wrestling in particular.
Yep.
Threw a lot of money at it, wanted to be like them, wanted to be one of them, and ended up ultimately killing one of the sport's greatest characters.
If not the greatest,
Yeah.
maybe one of the greatest wrestling figures. I mean, what could he have went on to do?
Right.
As
Yeah,
far
Dave-
as
Dave,
it's like
as far
maybe
as
not
coaching
wrestling,
and
but as far
mentoring
as
and
coaching and the
for the
program
sport,
for the
yeah.
U.S.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, damn, he'd be like the Coach K of wrestling.
Yeah, it's a shame it went the way it went because DuPont was doing good things. He just had to make them bad, by his character because his ego. He couldn't just know his part, which was supporting them financially, giving them the things they need to flourish. He had to be a wrestler himself and be one of those guys, and he wanted to be the coach, and he wanted to be the guy.
Right.
And he just couldn't handle knowing his place,
But I also think DuPont spent a lot of time in a fog. He spent a lot of
Yeah,
time
he
in a
had some real
drug-induced
issues.
fog, and the paranoia
We'll
just
get
crept
we'll
up
get
on
into
him,
all
man.
that. Let's start at the beginning because we're getting
Yeah.
into like one of my favorite quotes from this book, from Mark Schultz's book, quote: "There's some things in life you just can't buy, but John DuPont tried anyway." That is really kind of sums
That's a
this
great
book
quote.
up, man. Or it sums this story up.
Yeah, it does.
He wanted to be a lot of things, and he thought that he could get there by just throwing money at it. But really, like the stuff, like to become an Olympic athlete, because he wasn't just wrestling. He tried to become an Olympic. Pentathlon. He tried to get into that because he thought he might have the best chance and success and
Right.
like actually becoming an Olympic athlete. I mean, he just was not an athlete.
He wasn't.
just wasn't.
He just
was a
didn't have the
He was
tools.
a goofy dude.
Yeah.
It was not in the cards for him, but he couldn't accept that.
Right.
So let's start with the wrestlers. Dave Shultz was born June 6, 1952 in Palo Alto, California. Actually shares a birthday with my son. June 6th is
That's
my son's
awesome.
birthday. That's really awesome because I love Dave Schultz. So
Yeah, there you go.
yeah, I love them both. For once, I can say that it's not a serial killer.
Right,
At least
I
my
know.
son doesn't share
is
a
nice-
birthday with like David Berkowitz or something.
It is nice to have such an inspirational character that we're doing a case on finally.
right.
you
Yeah,
know?
really.
It is nice.
It is.
I'm not saying we haven't had heroes in the past. Like what was the brothers where one was a hero, he saved that little boy. Stainer, Stainers,
Stainers, yeah.
the Stainer brothers. Like we have a few like there and there, here and there, but not someone like Dave, where I admire his dedication, his attitude, his humility.
Humble was
Dude,
man.
his
an
humility was
understatement. The dude
incredible.
the dude was truly humble. It wasn't like fake humble either. It was
No,
like-
this
his
dude-
wife. I love the story in that documentary of when his wife met him, and
Mm-hmm.
like she started dating him, and she didn't even know he wrestled. She went back to his dorm or whatever, or I think they met in college maybe.
Yeah.
She went back to his dorm, and there's fucking medals like all over
Dude,
the place.
that speaks so much volumes
and-
about a person.
And because he had kind of mentioned like, yeah, I wrestle or whatever. And she's like, oh, cool. Like, he
Yeah.
just like, yeah, I wrestle. And she was like, oh, cool. And then she goes back and she's like, oh, you're like really good.
Yeah, she's like, no, you
"Yeah."
don't just wrestle.
He's like, yeah, I like it. It's like fucking Olympic gold medals hanging up and shit.
He's over there
dabble.
playing. He's over there playing NBA Jam. He's like, yeah, I like it. It's all right.
I dabble a little bit. I happen to be one of like the 2 best wrestlers in the world. That's
Right.
all. No big deal. No biggie.
No biggie.
Wish I could be like that. If I was as good as him, man, I'd be fucking wearing my medals all over the place.
No, nah, you wouldn't. You wouldn't do that, man.
I know.
Because
It sounds funny to say though.
yeah,
So yeah, his brother Mark Shultz was born October 26, 1960. There was an 8-year gap between them. Mark being the younger brother,
Yeah.
always looking up to his brother Dave.
8-year gap. I did not know it was that
Yeah,
much.
it's pretty extreme. The book, you wouldn't think so. It sounds like they followed the same path, like
Yes,
just a
it
year
sounded like they were
behind or
right
something.
behind each
I had
other.
to keep checking that. I'm like, the book makes it sound like he was like 1 year behind his brother, but
Right.
it's 8 years. That's a huge gap.
In order for them to be able to practice and wrestle together, I mean, that's way late in their life. Like,
Right.
no wonder Dave was so more farther advanced. Like,
Yeah.
because I didn't understand. 'Cause like you said, the book makes it seem like they're maybe 3-year gap at most, 2-3 years.
No.
But no, 8 years. That's a big gap, man.
Yeah. Combined, the brother. It's actually surprising they were as close as they were too, considering that
Yeah.
8-year gap, which says a lot about Dave's character as
Well,
well. Because a lot of older brothers, when you got an 8-year gap, they just they don't tend to be that close with their younger brother because
Absolutely.
they're doing bigger, better things. They're off.
Especially brothers.
Yeah.
Like an older sister, I feel like tends to take care of their younger siblings a
Yeah.
little more and want to be connected. But an older brother, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. We
A lot
can
of times
be.
that
I'm an
big of
older
a gap,
brother,
they
and
don't
I can
want
relate.
They don't want anything to do with their younger brother that's that much younger.
I have my youngest sister. I have one sister that's 27, and then I have another sister that's 15, and I don't feel as close to her, and it's just because we didn't grow up together.
Yeah.
That's all it is, man.
Yeah, you don't have common. You don't have like all the same people that you hung out with. You
Right.
don't have the same. Yeah, by the time you're out of school, like
Dude,
it's
you're-
totally different class.
You're
of
different
kids.
generations.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
generations span? What 15 years? We're basically different generations.
Well, combined, the brothers would go on to win a combined 4 collegiate championships, 2 Olympic gold medals, and 3 world wrestling titles. All in a time where, like we said, the U.S. really wasn't supporting wrestlers either.
These guys
so-
were making like $10,000 a year.
Yeah, we'll get into the specifics of how little the U.S. was supporting them, but basically Russia during this time was fully funding their wrestlers to make They were paying them full salary just to wrestle so that they could win Olympics.
Probably housing and
Yes.
and food
Giving
as well.
them everything they
Yeah.
needed. Yep. And then in America, it was nothing. Like you had to basically be in the top 3 to get even any money at all
Right.
in USA Wrestling. And as far as like your daily being able to live, no, they had to go become like assistant coaches at wrestling programs and stuff
Right.
in order just to make a meager salary with no health insurance a lot of times.
Right, and it's not like these guys could just go get a regular job and wrestle part-time because wrestling part-time would not be
No,
enough.
hell no.
It's
No.
not enough to
No.
be a gold
You had to
medalist.
be on the mat hours and hours per day.
Yes.
And eating right, and
So you had to be
completely
around it.
dedicating
You had to
yourself.
be working in a gym. Your jobs were limited if you wanted to stay in that
yeah,
field.
That's a good point. They had to be wrestling jobs
Yes.
because that's the only way you could get paid to be doing what you need to be doing to stay on
Exactly.
track.
Yep.
The brothers' parents divorced when Dave was 11 and Mark 3. Apparently, it wasn't a nasty divorce. The boys were also very close to their grandparents on their mother's side. As a boy, Dave was nicknamed Pudge. He was also uncoordinated and dyslexic, apparently, when he was younger.
That's interesting.
Which the dyslexia played a big role in his success later because he became very ambidextrous. He became capable of using both hands
Yeah.
and both legs the same. So when he wrestled, he could shoot on either side just as good. Like whereas most people tended to be better at one way.
Right. They want to get their opponent on the one side, their strong side or whatever.
Yeah, he was completely. He could just flip. Like it's like a boxer that could go southpaw or regular orthodox stance and be just as good at both.
Right.
Which is very rare. He had a great difficulty, Dave, as a child reading and was placed in remedial classes actually, but he was known to be very bright. He's just struggled with reading because of his severe dyslexia.
Right.
Mark was small and Dave dyslexic, which led to frequent bullying of them both when they were younger. Another sign of things to come with them wanting to get into wrestling and stuff to defend
Yeah.
themselves.
Some sort of self-defense, right?
Right. One day when Dave was in 3rd grade, a kid made fun of him for being in remedial classes. Dave took the boy to the ground and slammed his head against the concrete, knocking the boy out and cracking his skull. He was then known as the toughest kid in school. So even before he got into wrestling, it was already his inclination was to take a guy or a kid to the ground and beat him up. And he was always good at it.
Right. And you would think though, like a grappling style would fit him better if he didn't have the best motor skills, if he wasn't coordinated.
Yeah.
Like I bet Dave wasn't good at ping pong.
Right.
You know what I mean? But when he got his hands on something, the dude was loose and limber and strong.
Yes. Yes.
And it was just in his wheelhouse, man. He had the perfect build for it, in my opinion.
Yeah. Especially for freestyle wrestling, which is what he really became known for. He just like he had that. He's like you said, he was like lean but like super strong for a guy that didn't look thick. Like because Mark, his younger brother, would end up having a much different build. They would look completely different.
Yeah, Mark was bigger than him, wasn't he? He was stocky.
Yeah,
he had like
so,
the thick neck.
Even when you just see the casting of the movie Foxcatcher, you got Channing Tatum,
Right.
and then you got Mark Ruffalo, two totally different looking guys.
But that's exactly how the brothers
and they
were.
had Tatum look. They had him bulk up because Mark was huge and he was known to be a physical force wrestling, like he used his brute strength over, whereas Dave was a technician, like the best technician the sport's ever known. Like he knew every move. And he could do a clinic. He could do seminars and teach guys that have been wrestling forever new shit that they didn't know because he just mastered every technique and added to it. And he just, like, that's the part of the game that he loved, was the mind game of like learning how to manipulate someone.
I think ultimately what made Dave more successful than Mark was the ability to keep his cool. I think he practiced that day in and day out. Mark just seemed like more of a hothead. He seemed like more of a passionate wrestler. You know what I mean? Like if somebody really wanted to get under his skin, that's how you would beat Mark.
I'm gonna smash him.
Yeah, because he would do
more
like
of a meathead.
Yeah,
more of a meathead.
He would do some crazy shit and make a mistake. But Dave
Dave would use your aggression against you.
Right, he's like slamming you to the mat while smiling.
Yeah.
Like he's just
right.
You can't get under his skin, man.
Another time, a bully was picking on Mark. Dave took the kid to the ground yet again, pummeled him until he ran home crying. So Dave quickly, maybe not the biggest kid, but became known as the kid you didn't want to mess with at school.
Yeah.
A beef between Dave and a kid named John developed at school, and the two agreed to meet on the playground for a fight after school. Once again, Dave ended up on top and pummeled John in front of many onlookers. Both were crying during the fight, however. This is actually something I thought was interesting from the book. From Mark's perspective, he witnessed this fight of his older brother, obviously doing this to his kid, and it reminded me of like A Christmas Story, where Ralphie's like on top and he's beating up on the bully, but he's also crying. He's like, I don't want to have to do this.
Well, dude,
you made me do this.
It's your adrenaline, it's your emotion, it's excitement.
You're so worked up.
And when you're a kid, I mean, it brings you to tears. Just like you have happy tears, you have sad tears, you have adrenaline tears too. Some people do. And it's like, don't be fooled. Just because they're crying, they can still whoop your ass.
They'll beat your face in while they're crying.
Right. They're mourning your loss of your face. Mark's like, I'm sorry, man, but you picked on my brother too.
Right. Their mother would end up remarrying and attend a graduate school at Stanford University. She accepted a job to be a costume designer for the Oregon Shakespeare Festival in Ashland, Oregon. A very prestigious job, apparently. Didn't pay a whole lot, but this forced them to move to Oregon, which...
Where were they from originally?
They were from California, Palo Alto
that's right.
area, I believe.
I know they spent a lot of time in Oregon.
And they loved it in California, and they hated it in Oregon. Or at least Mark, the younger brother, hated it in Oregon.
I bet, man.
He
Too much
talked a
rain.
lot. Remember, he talked a lot in the book about how much he despised Oregon.
Yeah, he really didn't like Oregon.
And being forced to move there. The move took them 6 hours from Palo Alto, where their father, grandparents, and friends stayed. The boys were close with their father, a Stanford grad, comedian, and drama professor.
That's interesting.
You can see that, I guess, in Dave. Maybe that's where he got that silly.
Dave must have been just like his dad.
Yeah, just naturally, right?
Yep. I bet if
I'd like to see a picture of his dad, see if they look alike.
Dude, how funny would Dave be on stage though? Like, what if he would have took that path as a comedian?
Right.
Like with his demeanor and like the way he carries himself, I could see him up there just kind of chilling, with his like Neanderthal walk, just up there like saying jokes and shit.
Yeah.
Like Joe Rogan.
Yeah, I could see it. Mark grew to resent Oregon and still claims to hate it to this day, as I had mentioned. Their mother soon divorced again, and her parents passed away. Her job at the Shakespeare Festival was one of the best in the country, but required most of her time and didn't provide an extravagant lifestyle by any means. So in Oregon, they basically lived in a shack behind the house. The boys and their mother lived in a 1,200 square foot house, but in the house, the second bedroom where they should be was like all glass windows.
Oh, like a sunroom.
Had no insulation, and so they would freeze if they were in there.
Basically an enclosed porch.
Yeah,
and you don't get much sun in Oregon.
Right.
So, that's not the best place to be,
right.
I wouldn't think. Like here in southern Nevada.
It might work out here.
A sunroom would be amazing.
Every day, and you're just in a glass room.
Right.
Yeah, so they basically lived in a shack behind the house, which they named the bunkhouse. It was uncomfortable and cold. It had no beds. They used cots and sleeping bags with a small electric heater.
Dude, I would have loved that as a kid, though.
Right.
I would have been like, please let me live out in the fucking shed.
You'd think it would be fun, right? Especially for Mark being 8 years younger.
Fun, dude.
For Mark being 8 years younger, you would think that like he's like camping with his older brother every night.
Yeah, you kind of have your own house. You have your own little house. You do what you want in there.
Yeah. The boys were always dirty and often wore the same clothes for days on end. In 6th grade, Mark broke 20 of their school's 25 athletic records for his grade. So Mark showed to be a very athletic kid.
Right.
And he realized right away that he was different as far as a physical presence. Like he raced some kid in school and just blew him away. And he was like, I think I have... Later, he describes that he thinks he has like more fast twitch muscle fibers or something, which there's different types of body styles. There's more endurance people, and then there's like the quick twitch
there
athletes. In 6th grade, I already said that. Dave took up wrestling in the 7th grade and immediately fell in love with the sport from the start. He would later be known as one of the smartest and most brilliant technicians the sport's ever seen. This started back in the 7th grade when he was known to take others' techniques and improve them, as well as frequently baiting his opponents into traps that he had set for them. Getting better at wrestling was all Dave cared about. He carried wrestling shoes with him at all times and wore a singlet underneath his clothes just in case.
Just in case, bro. You want to go?
Bro,
you want to go?
Can you imagine? You're like, fuck with some dude. And you're like, yeah, let's go. And he rips off his fucking shirt. There's a singlet underneath. You're like, oh, Christ.
Fuck.
What have I done?
And all that hair, too. Oh, God.
He probably had like cauliflower ear when he was like 10. Like,
Oh,
fuck.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's just so scary. Dude's got a singlet on underneath his clothes.
Never know, man.
Right? You just don't know, man. You don't know when shit's going to go down. It's believed that dyslexia that plagued Dave for so long in school actually helped to make him a more dominant wrestler because, as I had mentioned, it made him ambidextrous.
Right.
And in wrestling, he could do techniques both sides without a hitch, which is not common. Usually, like you said, you preferred one side or the other.
Yeah.
You're better at it. You try to do both, but like most sports, you try and throw a ball with your left hand. If you're right-handed, have fun.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to look silly.
Yeah. I had a buddy growing up that used to do that. Like when we would play wiffle ball or play like if we played like backyard baseball with a tennis ball, he would always throw left-handed. And he was right-handed because he said he didn't want to hurt his arm throwing like a too light of a ball or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, you couldn't tell. Like when in the game, you couldn't fucking tell.
Huh.
Like it was natural. It looked exactly the same on both
did,
sides.
Yeah, I think really.
It's about working on it.
Yes.
Like I can hit left-handed. I can hit right and left-handed. I used to do that when I played, but like throwing, that's a different.
Yeah, I think
There's
it's.
a lot more to
I don't
that,
think it's
but-
something you can't overcome. For sure, it is. Like we tend to pick one side. We pick a side as a kid, and then I think we just keep doing it with that one, and then we get really good. And if you practiced endlessly with your left hand, you would definitely continue to get better. And
So
better
you
and
don't
better.
think you're biologically predisposed to one hand?
I don't know.
Like what if you are
is
naturally
interest-
right-handed, but as a kid, your parents kept making you like throw left-handed? Like, cause there's plenty of dads that do that shit. Because if you're a left-handed pitcher, you got a much better chance of getting into the pros. So dads will do that. It's
Or
like, what if a
there's-
kid grows up and he's like a mediocre pitcher left-handed, but he could have been a fucking ace right-handed?
There's also parents who are embarrassed for their kid being left-handed and forced. I know actually someone who, growing up, their mom made them use their right hand.
I don't
for everything.
understand that at all. Why would you
Right?
be
It's so
embarrassed of
stupid.
that? That's
So dumb.
That's
Just because
so
it's
petty.
different, because it's a little different. It's actually kind of cool,
It's definitely cool.
right?
Why would you not want to be left-handed?
But I do think it's interesting that we tend to choose a side when it comes to like snowboarding, skateboarding, like fakie or regular. You know how that's
Oh,
just a
yeah.
natural thing. It feels awkward to do it the other way.
Or it's goofy or regular, right?
Goofy or regular.
Yeah, I'm goofy. I get right foot forward. I'm goofy.
Oh, you
All
are.
right, yeah. I've just always ridden like that. The other way feels weird for me. I feel like I can't balance as good.
Yeah, that's strange. I guess maybe it is just genetic. I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know if you could ever be as good on the other side.
Mm-mm.
No. My dad, actually, funny story. We went snowboarding. He'd always skied, and I started snowboarding.
My God, snowboarding.
And so he's like, you know what? I'm going to try the snowboarding thing. He goes, and the first time he tried it, they gave him the wrong side board. Like, and he just rolled with it. He's like, I think he's goofy.
Yeah.
And he went regular.
Oh, no.
And was trying his first time ever to snowboard was doing backwards.
Oh,
and
my
he ended up
God.
plowing into some lady.
Dude, he's lucky he didn't like sink an edge like I did.
Catch an edge, yeah.
Oh, my gosh, dude.
Yeah.
I did that shit and fell on my ass.
Some lady that was like the most decked out woman on the fucking mountain, was like head to toe, had the fanciest gear and everything, like probably had a lot of money, and he wiped her out. And he got up and he's like, I'm so sorry. He kept telling me she was just she was not happy. She kept dressing him down, and he's like, at a certain point he's like, fuck you, because he was like, I've said I'm sorry fucking 50 times. What more do you want me to do for you?
Yeah, really.
Yeah. And so
that's just people who pay for everything, right? They just get everything goes their way.
Yeah.
They're used to that.
Yeah, accidents happen out there.
Absolutely.
I got my wrist plowed into by my buddy, and I have a gnarly scar from snowboarding. That was my fault, though. Because I tried to do some stupid trick, and I landed, and my hands were on the ground, and he was right behind me, plowed right into me. I was lucky I didn't die, dude, because like he hit me full force with the edge of a snowboard on my wrist. That's where that looks like a shark bit me on my wrist.
Yeah.
It was deep, too. If they would right on my wrist, like where all the important shit is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dude, you're lucky it went like perpendicular to the veins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, let's get back on track.
All right.
Rising as quickly as Dave was in one of the world's toughest sports didn't go to his head. However, if someone happened to meet him, they would never know. He was always humble and even keel.
Yeah.
We talked about his character Mark started wrestling because it was mandatory in 7th grade PE class at the time, which I found interesting how times have changed.
Mandatory.
Mandatory in the area, I guess up in Oregon back in the, I don't know what year would this have been, probably the 70s? Yeah,
That's awesome.
70s. There was even a tournament in which all boys were required to compete in PE. Mark's
Required to?
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting. Mark said that he always got butterflies every single time he wrestled, no matter how many matches he had done through his life. It was
I can see
always
that.
the same. Yeah, that's stuff that I've done a million times. I still get butterflies.
You know what I think it is? I think it's just if you naturally have a competitive nature,
Yes.
you get butterflies no matter what. Like I still get butterflies when I'm going. Like if I'm playing ping pong against somebody, I'm gonna get a little bit of butterflies till the game
Yep.
starts. Like
Yep.
it's just whatever. It's just I'm competitive and I
Yep.
want to win. And
Yep.
if you want to win, you're gonna have a little bit of a nervous reaction.
Thinking about what if I don't win? It's
Yeah.
gonna be horrible.
That's gonna be horrible.
Yeah,
I'm not
I'm
gonna
that
have
guy.
fun.
I'm that guy. I'm that guy that's not fun to play against stuff with because I take it way too serious. But I love those people.
Yeah, they make you
I
better.
don't want to play you if you don't want to win.
Exactly.
What fun is that?
Exactly. Let's try to win here.
Right. Mark would win every PE tournament with no technique but raw strength and athleticism early on. He joined the wrestling team shortly after. Although he didn't have the same passion for wrestling that his brother did, he actually gravitated more towards gymnastics, which is what he had done first.
Right.
And
I think
became
it helped
great at
him,
that.
though.
Oh, 100%.
Helped him get strong.
Much
for
like
sure.
Dave's dyslexia helped him with wrestling, I think Mark's, there's no doubt about it, that him getting really good at gymnastics, that's known to translate very well to jiu-jitsu, to wrestling, if you're a gymnast.
Dude,
just
probably-
the body flexibility, the
Probably
strength,
any
core strength
sport,
you have.
honestly.
Oh, for sure.
Seriously. Like if you took gymnastics and went into football,
Basketball.
like you would be agile as hell.
Basketball,
Yeah,
like,
basketball.
I guarantee you can jump higher if you've been doing gymnastics for a while.
Oh my God,
You know,
yeah.
just like that kind of the tension your ligaments must have, and like
Yes.
the muscle, like the core strength that you have. It's got to be insane. He said that he became flexible enough to do the splits and strong enough to do 55 pull-ups after being in gymnastics. for a while.
55 pull-ups. God
That's
damn.
no joke. And do the splits.
Yeah.
Imagine you do the 55th pull-up and then you drop to the splits.
And then you just get up and walk away.
Yeah, literally mic drop. What more do I have to do?
Right. Some muscle ups.
Right.
You probably could do it. If you can do 55 pull-ups, you can do a damn muscle up, right?
Yeah.
You got to be able
Oh,
to.
for sure, for sure. He was the 1976, speaking of Mark, the 1976 Northern California age group all-around gymnastics champion for 15 to 16. So that's how good he was.
That was Mark.
That was Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dave never did gymnastics, as far as I know.
Right.
He as we said, he attributes a lot of his latter success in wrestling to his gymnastics. Eventually, Mark would quit gymnastics in large part because of his brother's success in wrestling. And shows a lot about the difference in their character. Mark was much more ego-driven, and a lot of the stuff he later did was just trying to keep up with his brother, I believe. You know
what?
I mean? Like, he couldn't stand all the attention that Dave was getting. He wasn't
Yes.
getting the same attention back for gymnastics that Dave was getting for wrestling. Everybody adored Dave because he was so badass at wrestling.
It's a man's sport, though. Wrestling
is.
is a man's sport. Like, that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. Like, men in gymnastics are not going to get as much respect. I'm not saying it's easier,
Right. No.
but they're just not going to get as
Well-
much respect from other men. And if your brother is dominating in a man's sport, you're going to have men's men around you all the time, and it's going to drive you. You're going to be like, damn, I want a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Now think about this. What if the roles were reversed? What if Mark took wrestling and Dave took gymnastics? I don't think Dave crosses over to do
No,
wrestling.
that's what I'm saying. Their character's different.
Their character's different, right? Yeah,
Dave
Mark
did what Dave wanted to do. I don't
Yes.
think he let others influence his decisions
Exactly.
at all. You know.
Dave would have been just as happy in gymnastics, and he probably would have been a damn gold medalist in that.
Yeah.
And he would have been like,
Undoubtedly,
I'm happy.
would have
This
been.
is.
I
this
think
is where
Dave
I'm at."
would have been great at anything because he was just that type that if he had a passion for it, he was going to learn the ins and outs of it. He's just
Yep.
one of those dudes. I think you could throw him in any era. Any era. There's people like this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? No matter, regardless of circumstance, I think he could have had a horrific childhood. Mm-hmm. And it's just like there's something about this guy.
Like a Mickey Mantle character. It's
Yeah,
like the people
you
talk
throw him
about
in
that.
any era, in any situation, and I think he was going to succeed.
Yeah.
He was going to go beyond others. You
Yep.
know,
Very
there's
true.
special people like that out there. I believe he was one of them.
It's the attitude, man. The attitude makes a huge difference.
And I think, we just keep kind of shitting on Mark in a sense, but like Mark, I think if he didn't have Dave as a brother, I don't know if he would have ever been special in anything. I think he was driven by Dave's success and saw the line of success, the path to take there.
Yeah.
and was really motivated because he didn't want to be like the inferior younger brother. You know?
Exactly.
He couldn't just be like state champion. He had to go on to win a gold because his brother won gold. You know,
Yeah.
like it had.
Yeah.
He was driven by that.
Definitely. Which is healthy in a way too.
Yeah. By now, Dave was getting collegiate offers from everybody because he was basically the best high school wrestler
Mm-hmm.
around. Mark began hanging out with bad influences and smoking weed around this time. One of these friends got arrested for stealing a check out of a car, forging it, and attempting to cash it. And Mark happened to be with him at the time and also got arrested. Getting arrested was a wake-up call for Mark. He quit gymnastics and enrolled in Tang Sudo. After 4 months training, Mark and Dave got into a fight at their mother's house, and Mark learned quickly that his Tang Sudo was no match for Dave's wrestling. And you know how Dave does. He took him to the ground,
Dude,
beat him up.
You know that's coming, right? It's like, oh, I'm doing a type of martial arts. You're doing a type of martial arts.
Oh,
Let's
for
see,
sure.
dude. And your brothers.
This is like the early days of UFC, man.
Dude,
they wanted to see what was the superior.
Mark probably went to like a week of classes and was like, "Let's go, Dave.
Right?
Let's go."
I'm gonna fucking spinning kick you to the head,
Right.
bitch. Dave's like, what?
Dave grabs his ankle and like
Double
fucking twists
legged
it around his head or some shit.
Before he could even spit the words out, he was on his back. Mark then signed up for wrestling at Ashland High School and never turned back. So he said he'd done a little bit of wrestling, but now he's like committed now.
Yeah.
Dave Schultz's senior year was considered by most experts as the most successful senior year in U.S. high school wrestling history. So winning first place in the prestigious Great Plains Freestyle Tournament qualified him to compete in the U.S. international team Tbilisi tournament in Soviet Georgia. So yeah, he's like we mentioned, every college is wanting a piece of Dave. They're trying to do anything they can do to get him because this dude is just prolific. The Tbilisi tournament is considered by many experts in the wrestling community as the toughest tournament in the world. Shultz would go on to earn a silver medal and was the highest placing American at the tournament. During his timing, due to the timing of Tbilisi, Shultz was not able to compete in high school tournaments that he needed to compete in to qualify for the California State Championships, but his coach, Ed Hart, successfully petitioned the state coaches to allow him to compete. Wrestling 2 classes above his normal division, he pinned all of his opponents in the state championships, but the last, whom he defeated 12-1 in the final match. So proved his dominance in California as well.
Oh, yeah.
Later that year, he won his first national title by winning the U.S. National Open Greco-Roman Championships and won the award for the most falls in the least amount of time.
Wow. Yeah, the dude was, like you said, prolific.
Yeah.
There was very few contests he entered, especially in his early days, like college years, that he lost, right? Or didn't come out with some sort of trophy, medal.
Mm-hmm. Mark didn't have the same instant and constant success that his older brother had early on because he didn't have the techniques.
He didn't have the time. He didn't put in the time that Dave put in.
Yeah, I mean, he was put in maybe he didn't have the prior time that Dave had.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
He wasn't in the sport as long, but he was still putting in the time on the mat. But I just think he was less focused on the techniques that Dave was. You know, Dave was like we said, technician, which I think was really what helped him the most in success. After one semester at Ashland High, he transferred back to Palo Alto, but was declared ineligible, ending the year with a 4-6 record. As a senior, he did not win any tournaments until the state qualifiers, where he won the league, region, section, and the state. He's the only California high school state champion wrestler never to win a regular season tournament. So he just kind of.
But that's just because he missed time, right?
Right.
I mean,
it seemed like it clicked for him one day. You know, it's like he was kind of struggling, and then boom. Like maybe he added the techniques he needed. He already had the physical abilities, obviously. Right. I think he was a much better athlete than his brother, Mark was.
Mark, overall, yeah, I would say he was.
Yeah, I think if you gave his like physical traits to Dave would have been unquestionably the greatest wrestler of all time. Like, not that Dave had a bad body for it, but Mark was like a freak athlete on top of. You know, if you add that to
it's like the wrestling mind went to Dave, and the wrestling body went to Mark.
Yeah,
it's a cruel god.
But yet they both were still 2 of the greatest wrestlers ever. So
yeah, for sure.
In college, Dave was a 3-time NCAA All-American, first at Oklahoma State, then twice at the University of Oklahoma. In 1982, he was the 167-pound weight class NCAA champion, defeating Mike Sheets from Oklahoma State University in the finals. His career collegiate record was 91-8, 30-4 at Oklahoma, and 61-4 at the University of Oklahoma.
Jesus,
that's pretty fucking good when you're talking, you know, NCAA. Like
hell yeah,
you know,
because you're gonna have bad days. You're gonna have days you feel like shit, or you're gonna have people that are just gonna be able to outpower you.
Wrestling the best of the best. Yeah. So to be 61-4 and 30-4 in 2 different colleges.
That's crazy.
Mark Shultz attended UCLA and won 18-8 in his freshman year. He transferred to the University of Oklahoma, redshirted, and in the following 3 years, 1981 to 1983, won 3 NCAA championships. So they're both just doing they're a prolific duo, the brothers, the Shultz brothers.
Right, and they're going wherever they want at this time too.
Yeah.
Because didn't Dave go to UCLA for a minute?
Dave went over with his brother for a
Yeah.
minute. Yeah.
And then they were like, this wrestling program sucks. we're out of here. It's like they could literally like call up anybody, right? And then
Pretty
they went
much.
to Oklahoma.
Yeah, they could bounce around wherever they need. Well, because weight is a big thing with wrestling too. So like, you really don't want to cut more than you're comfortable cutting, because that's one of the toughest parts about that sport. That's what separates mental
cutting weight.
toughness. The mental toughness of a college wrestler is honestly, I don't think there's anything tougher. Like you said gymnastics. We're not saying it's harder. I think it is. Like, I'm sure gymnastics are extremely hard.
Yeah.
At the higher levels, but wrestling, you're not only talking like the grind that you have to do, the overcoming of injuries, but then the weight cutting too. Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing like that. They all say, like, as tough as the sport is itself, the cutting of that weight is beyond tough. Like, it takes.
I believe
We've
it.
seen people melt down. Like, when we watch the early seasons of The Ultimate Fighter, there was dudes that just straight up quit. Like, this is their whole life, their dream. They're on TV. They have a chance to make a 6-figure contract, and the weight cutting was ended up like they just couldn't do it. Like, they get to the point where they're like drained. They've been in a sauna all day, and they need to lose another 4 pounds, and that 4 pounds decides the fate of their life after that, because they just can't do it. You've seen people shuffle up to the weight or to the scale like on the verge of death, because the weight cutting thing is honestly, it's a big debate in the community nowadays when we're talking about overall health of someone.
Right.
Like, dehydrating yourself to that level and then you're about to compete, not smart. I mean, you only have so long to rehydrate, and a lot of sports, they don't allow them to do IVs either.
Right.
So yeah, that was a big part of it. That's why they would jump around from schools too. If like they didn't have the right, if that program already had a wrestler they liked at a certain weight and that's the weight they wanted to wrestle at, they would go to a different school. Or, that type of stuff. The details of it.
That's true.
When Mark was the NCAA champion in his sophomore year at 167, his junior year he moved up to 177, where he faced two-time NCAA champion Ed Bannock and the former NCAA champion Matt Rice. Bannock was on track to become the first 4-time NCAA champion in history. However, Shultz beat Bannock 16-8 in one of, if not the best, NCAA finals matches of all time, and was named Outstanding Wrestler of the tournament. In his senior year, he went undefeated and set the University of Oklahoma record for most victories in a single season without a loss. He was also named University of Oklahoma's Big 8 medallion winner for Outstanding Senior Male Student Athlete. So Mark doing his thing.
Yeah.
So we get these two.
He's no slouch, that's for sure.
Oh, hell no. They were both, like we said, using their different abilities to their advantage. Mark
were,
much more of a physical, not that Dave wasn't physical, that's his physical sport, but Mark like over the top physicality, like just manhandling people. Dave beating them technically most of the time. So we've talked about their childhoods, their rise to the top of wrestling in college, and they're heading towards trying to take it to the next level with world titles and Olympic medals. And we'll go into the childhood of someone that they're later going to cross paths with that ends up making this a tragic story.
Exactly.
A guy by the name of John DuPont. He was born November 22nd, 1938 in Philadelphia. He shares a birthday with Bruce Lee and Bill Nye the Science Guy, two of the coolest people ever. So I guess this had to balance out with this douchebag. Bill Nye the Science Guy.
I don't think John was so much of a douchebag as he was. It's just
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
I think he was just mentally ill, man.
Yeah, I
He's
mean,
just
he did have
paranoid.
kind of a shitty upbringing, really. I mean, he had all the money in the world, but that doesn't buy you everything.
No,
Doesn't buy you
absolutely
happiness all
not.
the time. Yeah, so he's born in Philadelphia. He was the youngest of 4 children of William DuPont Jr. and Jean Austin. He grew up at Lister Hall, a mansion built by his maternal grandfather on more than 200 acres of land that was given to his parents at their wedding by said grandfather.
Wow,
So yeah, I mean,
200 acres.
yeah, and then it expanded shortly after that. It would
Just
end
a
up
little
being
wedding gift.
It would end up being over 800 acres.
That's
I mean,
incredible.
this is just beautiful land too. That's in the documentary.
Yes,
You see the sprawling, just
it is.
it's like their own
gorgeous.
world is what the police there would basically, the wrestlers, the police, everybody that got to visit this farm
Right.
would say the same thing. It was like literally like their own world there. They did what they wanted. Like
Yep.
he would end up as an adult just walking around the farm, hunting whatever he felt like hunting, shooting whatever. Like he did what he wanted.
Driving cars into ponds. Twice.
Yeah. Let's see how he got to be such a wild person as an adult, because his childhood was a little strange. Both
Right.
his parents' families had immigrated from Europe to the United States at the beginning of the 19th century and became highly successful. The DuPont family has been one of the richest families in America since the mid-19th century, when it founded its fortune in the gunpowder business. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, it expanded its wealth through the chemical industry and the automotive industry with substantial interest in General Motors and various other corporations. So they basically hit it big with gunpowder early on, and then they kept investing in things that kept blowing up. And,
Smart.
Yeah, they made some smart investments.
They sure did.
During the 1920s and 1930s, the couple acquired more land and developed Lister Hall Farm for thoroughbred breeding, showing, and racing. The farm was now around 800 acres. Like we'd said, his mother retained Lister Hall Farm after the couple divorced in 1941. She added a dairy herd of cattle and bred Welsh ponies at the farm as well. So this thing... Speaking of ponies, I swear to God, you
Perfect
cannot
timing.
write this shit.
You cannot.
The shed that we record in is right next to my wife's horses, and they
Yeah.
just literally heard us talking about horses, I
They're like,
guess, and
"Hey."
got excited.
We're horses.
We're horses too, guys. Got my horses in the back.
Oh, no. Not that song again.
Michael brought it up before this, and I told him,
God
"You fucked
damn
up,
it.
dude. I'm gonna keep
God
singing
damn Old
that
Town
shit 'cause
Road.
it's catchy." I got my horses in the back. I do, man. You can hear them.
I hear him.
His mother retained Lister Hall Farm. So, like we said, the parents divorced. John's parents. John DuPont's parents.
two parents.
John's
divorce.
divorced. They divorce. So he ends up growing up with his mother on this 800-acre farm with dairy cows and racing horses and you name it.
In basically isolation,
It's got its
though.
own. Yeah, it's got its own ponds. It's got everything. It's insane.
I heard a story. It was in the documentary. One of the wrestlers shared it, and they said that he basically was in isolation until he was like 13.
Yeah.
That's some serious formative years right
I doubt
there.
he ever left the farm, and it was his parents divorced when he was 2, so he never really got to know his father. He was never close with his father.
Right.
He was said as an adult that, like, as far as he'd have to like schedule an appointment to even talk to his father, and it was like his dad.
And
was
then
a big
even
kid.
then, he didn't want to talk to him half the time.
He wasn't really interested in talking to John, and so from the time he was 2. He was living with his mom on this farm, and his siblings were older. He had 2 older sisters, Jean and Evelyn, and an older brother named Henry E.I. DuPont, and a younger half-brother born of their father's second marriage, but he was not close with his siblings growing up either because they were so much older than him.
Right.
His youngest sibling, so the closest one to him, was still 11 years older than him. We talked about this earlier in the episode, the gap,
That's
and
a
how you're
big
not
gap,
real
man.
close to your siblings when they're that big.
That's like
of a gap.
that's like an uncle and nephew type relationship, more so.
Yeah, so it was basically him and his mommy.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of that. A lot of times that goes bad, like Ed Gein, and when it's
We can think of a few.
Yeah, there's a few.
Ed Kemper.
Yeah, there's a few out
There's
there.
a few scenarios.
Inside his mansion, DuPont was an incredibly lonely child. His father was rarely at home, and his siblings were far older than him. And that's before his parents divorced and his dad left. I'm guessing he was rarely home. And the only friend he thought he had was the son of a chauffeur. Although in time, DuPont would find out that his mother had paid the boy to pretend to like him.
God damn it.
Fuck. That's
Why would you let him find that out?
Right.
Jesus, Mom.
It didn't help that innately DuPont was eccentric, to say the least. John's father wanted little to do with him after he grew up. Quote from John, "I've spent a lifetime looking for a father." John basically grew up on the farm with just his mother and was often mocked in school for being awkward and having a stutter. So yeah, he also had a stutter growing up. He would graduate from Haverford School in 1957. He did participate in wrestling and swimming at Haverford. A little foreshadowing there.
Is that a private school?
I think so.
Makes sense.
And I'm sure he was still at the bottom of the team.
Oh.
Probably didn't. He's probably just the guy that they beat up on.
Come on, man. You don't think you could buy a starting spot?
He's you gotta watch the videos. He's not an athlete.
Right.
He attended the University of Pennsylvania and withdrew before completing his freshman year. He later attended college in Miami, Florida, where he studied under and was mentored by scientist Oscar T. Auer. I don't know that guy, but apparently he's a big guy, big name, because it was thought up enough to mention that he studied under this guy.
Right. I'm not familiar either.
Yeah. Also competed on the swim team while at Miami University and dreamed of one day competing in the Olympics. He then decided to try his luck at competing in the pentathlon. He hoped that this sport would give him a better shot at competing in the Olympics because it's kind of a sport for the rich. Mm-hmm. And not as many people can really practice to compete for that because
Right.
it involves swimming, horseback riding, pistol shooting, and fencing.
That is so rich, right? That's
Yeah,
like,
how many kids you know that aren't rich that are doing all of those activities on a regular basis?
dude, just fencing in general.
horseback riding.
If you're doing polo
and fencing, those two.
Like that's
and pistol shooting.
and pistols. Yeah, just for fun. Just riding around doing all three.
Luckily for John, like he had access to millions of dollars, and all he had to go do is, "Mommy."
Yeah.
And she went ahead and put in a shooting range, a cross-country course, an Olympic swimming pool, all on the property on the DuPont farm.
Nice of her.
Went ahead and put in everything he needed. He still was declared not Olympic material, however.
Shocking.
Even after having all of the resources available to him. Like I said, not an athlete.
Right.
He graduated from the University of Miami in 1965 with a Bachelor of Science degree in zoology. Interesting
Okay.
path to take
I wonder why.
when you want to be an Olympic athlete.
Yeah.
Become a zoologist.
Yeah. Is that the normal
I just think he
path?
did whatever. He
just
got into
did whatever.
he thought
Yeah.
he could make a name in. I think he was
Yeah.
just looking for an identity.
Yeah. I wonder how much
He just wanted respect. I got no respect.
I wonder how much influence people in his life had at this time, because you saw when he idolized someone, he took on that persona. So I wonder if there was
It
someone,
would become Dave at one point.
Yes, I wonder if there was someone in his life at that time who was like big into zoology, maybe his quote unquote best friend or someone he wanted to be best friends with was going into zoology.
Well, he ended
and
up
was
making
like,
his
well,
own-
I'll go into zoology.
Yeah, I remember he makes his own museum on the farm, and like
Yeah.
he's got all these animals that he had shot and like had stuffed and whatnot.
Right.
And, yeah, he got really into birds.
Yeah, he
He
did.
had a lot of interest, but I guess you
Lot of
can
duck
you can
hunting.
have a lot of interest when you got a lot of time on your hands and a lot of money.
Yeah, it's not like you have to work. Dude, imagine
Right.
if we didn't have to work.
Right? I'd have a museum too. Shit. In 1972, DuPont founded the Delaware Museum of Natural History and installed himself as the director. He also wrote 4 books about birds during this period.
We need to get those.
DuPont's bird book.
Right.
God, you want to go to sleep? That's like a sleeping pill,
I
right
would love
there.
to read that. Maybe I'll review it on Higher Thoughts
There you go.
if I can find one.
Yeah. DuPont went on to complete a doctorate in natural science from Villanova in 1973. By the time he was 30, he realized that he was never going to actually compete in the Olympics. He finally came to that realization, huh?
Whew.
He'd also suffered a severe injury to the testicles. Yeah, this is an interesting story that Dave found out later on when he was living on the DuPont farm, and DuPont got drunk one night and actually finally confided in Dave, or not Dave, but in Mark.
Yeah.
He said this is one of the only moments that Mark ever felt he was being genuine and not being deceitful, was he broke down and told him this story of how he was horseback riding,
Yeah.
I believe in his late teen years, and got thrown from the horse onto a fence on the property and ended up losing his testicles. It was that severe. And he had like plastic testicles, and he had to inject testosterone every day so that his
Yeah.
hormone levels were right. And it made so much sense to Mark. He's like, that's why he's all over the place. That's why he's also seems feminine at times. It might have been
And
due
that's-
to his hormones.
Yeah, maybe
being
he's
all
not
over
taking the
place.
shots or whatever.
Yeah, there was days where he forget to take it.
Right. I mean, well, forget, because he's on a million other substances as well at
That's-
any
yeah.
given time.
That's true, because Mark also witnessed some drug abuse with cocaine and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he had suffered this injury after being thrown from the horse. In 1976, John was given a manager spot on the U.S. Olympic pentathlon team due to all of his contributions to the team. This is all he wanted, man. So he didn't even have to compete, which I don't know if he really wanted that. He just wanted the image, So like this gave him what he wanted. He was allowed to play the part of an actual Olympian. He got to wear the outfit. He was in the team photo. So then he just got to brag to people like, look, I was an Olympic swimmer.
Right.
Look, here I am in the picture. I got the outfit.
That's right. That's me right there.
Right? You'll never see a picture of me swimming in the outfit, but
Right.
he began inviting Olympians to train at the farm or Team Foxcatcher facilities. First, it was swimmers and pentathlon athletes, and obviously later it would become wrestling. But the Foxcatcher thing came from his father. He didn't even come up with the name. He was not original enough to do that, but his father had named certain facilities, like the horse racing facilities there, Foxcatcher, because it's one of his favorite pastimes, being his father.
I did not know that
was
John didn't
catching
come up with
foxes.
that. I thought he came up with that. And you know what? I've always thought that was a cool name.
Yeah, right? I was like, there's too much
I was
credit.
like, God damn it. The one cool thing about it.
Right. No, his dad was really into hunting foxes, apparently, and
Okay.
named a lot of his facilities Foxcatcher.
They had cool gear, dude. Like
Yeah.
with the fox like sprinting on it, and then
Yes.
it just said Foxcatcher.
Dude, that
I would
wrestling
rock one of those
facility-
hoodies right now, bro.
You know what? He had a knack for design, I guess, because even all the wrestlers were like, this was the fucking sickest wrestling facility of all time.
Yeah.
What he ends up putting in. And I don't know if maybe it was him, maybe it was someone else. Maybe he had an architect on staff.
True. Or
somebody
maybe
went to.
I'm sure he was getting input from the wrestlers too.
Yeah, but still, like even with them telling you, like you'd still have to have a knack for being able to design this and set it up properly. But it was ridiculous. It's also in the documentary you can see extensive
tons
footage
of original
this facility.
footage.
Yeah. So
Why were they videotaping so much? It's just for the hell of it?
I think this is what they did. I think also he was such a egomaniac, John, that he just like wanted to be always seen strutting around, with all these athletes, like
maybe.
acting like he was one of them. And
You
he had film crews follow
so
him
you think
around, dude.
he-
He was one of those
yeah.
guys that paid to have documentaries made about him and stuff, and his influence on
That's a
the
good point.
Olympics and American athletics.
Because there are some amazing shots in that documentary, and I'm like, God damn, these guys recorded everything.
He literally had fucking film crews follow him around all the time. That's
Yeah.
why, because he wanted to be a big deal. And when you got the money, people will do what you want.
Yeah.
By now, John had gotten quite cushy with the new township police force as well. Yeah, so on the farm, the police were using his facilities. The gun range he put in when he wanted to be a pentathlon athlete.
Yep.
They were using that gun range for their training.
Dude,
He actually bought them bulletproof vests.
I was about to say,
He provided them
Yeah.
with stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me that's not a conflict of interest.
that's a huge conflict.
And
of
it became a
interest,
problem
man.
because a lot of reports of his erratic, violent behavior later on were ignored by the police force there
Yes.
because he was all cushy and in cahoots with them.
Well, these cops are showing up wearing gear that he bought them. Like, what the hell are they
They're gonna
supposed to
respond
do?
to his violent
Right.
fucking event where he's got a gun and they're wearing his vests.
Right? He could have a gun pointed at him and be like, take that vest off, that's mine, you son of a bitch. Like, yeah, the cops, like, in a way, didn't have a leg to stand on.
He also provided them with radios and access to his helicopter. So, someone
Yeah, you got to
in
be
the
careful with
Pennsylvania
that stuff,
area
man.
is on the run and the helicopter's chasing him down. That's DuPont's helicopter.
You got to be careful
just
with that kind of
crazy,
stuff, man.
right?
In law enforcement.
Yeah, I'm
you
sure
can't-
they learned from this. I'm
Yeah.
sure, because they caught some hell after this thing went down.
Yeah.
What's up, creepers? Well, it's that time of year again. Valentine's Day is upon us. Luckily for you, we have a new sponsor, Ana Luisa. They offer beautiful jewelry of exceptional quality at a fair price, and they are 100% carbon neutral. How can you get any better? You get a beautiful piece of jewelry and you're not harming the planet in the process. They offset 100% of their carbon emissions, starting with the sourcing of their raw materials all the way to the disposal of the pieces. Everything is in limited batches, ensuring the highest production standards while eliminating excessive waste. The prices of the jewelry start at just $39 with no luxury markup. The long-lasting pieces are crafted with care from the best noble metals, and they offer a 365-day warranty to replace or refund any piece that doesn't meet your expectations. And because all you need is love, and jewelry on sale, of course, Ana Luisa is having a Valentine's Day sale right now. The sale is 15% off all products. And the last day to guarantee shipping before Valentine's Day for the U.S. is on February 10th, and international, February 8th, Monday. So you got to act fast to get that 15% off all products. I actually already ordered my wife a necklace off of analuisa.com. It's called the Miche. It's 14 karat gold plated with a green aventurine stone. I received it. I can't wait to give it to her. It feels so high quality, and she's going to love the fact that it's carbon neutral. So order some jewelry for yourself or for your significant other this Valentine's Day, and know that there was no sketchy business practices behind the making of it. It makes you feel that much better when you wear it. And right now, the Valentine's Day sale is still going on. Use our link in the description or go to analuisa.com. That's ANALUISA. ANALUISA. analuisa.com. Go there now to save 15% off all products.
You got to have an unbiased police force, and I know that's impossible to have, but to this extent, it's just too much.
Half or more of the police force there was also using his farm for hunting. He would let them come and hunt deer. And they would all just be riding around in the back of a pickup on DuPont's estate hunting deer.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can't tell me they're not going to look the other way with just about anything he does that's illegal.
Oh, absolutely.
Back to the Shultz brothers. After college, the Shultz brothers looked to take their wrestling abilities to the world stage. In 1984, Mark and Dave both won Olympic gold in wrestling events. An amazing feat considering the lack of funding that American wrestlers had compared to the Russians and other Eastern Bloc countries.
Absolutely.
The following year, Mark won the World Championships and faced competitors from all over the Eastern Bloc countries who had boycotted the 1984 Olympics. Oh, that's why they won gold, because They boycotted it.
The Russians did?
Yeah.
God damn it, Russians. We'll take it. We'll
Yeah,
take it.
we'll take it, man.
Fuck it.
Hey,
We'll take
you
it.
bowed out of the competition.
Yeah,
What do you want?
it's not our fault.
We could have beat you. We don't know.
Yeah, it could happen.
It's like Drago versus Rocky, dude. Even with all of their success, Mark was still struggling to make it financially at the time. USA Wrestling did little to nothing to provide the wrestlers financially. They were not paid a regular salary to be a part of the team. Russia took care of their wrestlers financially so they would be able to focus solely on wrestling, while American wrestlers had to take low-paying jobs as coaching assistants at colleges. In 1983, American wrestlers who placed in the top 7 in the World's tournament received only $1,500. Dave, who got first place in 1983, received $5,000.
Wow.
So that's supposed to get you through to the next.
$5,000.
Yeah, whopping $5,000.
Don't spend it all in one place,
but
Dave.
It's nice, but if that's supposed to carry you through your year, training, food, God forbid you have an injury, that's just not. It's not going to cut it.
That's not going to cut it at all.
No,
Let alone trying to buy like health insurance or
right.
dental.
Yeah, forget it. The desperation on part of the American wrestlers with dreams of winning gold medals left the door open for someone like John DuPont to make an offer they couldn't refuse. So they're basically like ripe for the picking for a guy like this to come along and offer them basically a salary to wrestle for his program.
Well, they're already in it, dude. They're already neck deep in this sport. They've
Right.
already committed their lives to it. And then now they feel like they've been thrown a life raft. It does seem like the perfect opportunity.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't take it?
Yeah. So it began with a phone call. In 1986, Mark Shultz received a call from John DuPont. Well, first he got a call from someone at a college, right? It was someone at Villanova.
Yes.
Gave him a call and said that he should be expecting a call from a guy named John DuPont, and he's a bigwig, and take him at his word. He means what he says, and he's the real deal. He actually does have a lot of money and all this stuff, and so he basically got like a pre-call. Then he receives the call from John DuPont, who said he was starting up an NCAA Division I wrestling program at Villanova University from scratch and wanted Mark to be his assistant coach. And so he asked what it would take, how much per year would it cost to get him to do this job.
Right.
Mark said only $24,000 per year would suffice to do the job. So he was really telling him the bare minimum as far as this is what I need I just want to wrestle and I need to just be able to live,
Right.
Have a place, a roof over my head and some food. Nothing crazy.
And that's super low for John
And
DuPont.
he said that he later realized he could have said a whole lot more and he should have said a whole lot more.
Yes.
Because once he got to Villanova, he realized what a pain in the ass it was. It wasn't going to be as simple as go there, assistant coach, wrestle, and do your thing, and you get paid. He then had to be like a therapist for John DuPont for a whill. It was
Exactly.
It
was a lot more involved.
Much more strings attached. He thought, okay, DuPont's going to pay for this thing. He wants to get this program going, and he'll stay out of my hair and let me do my job. No, DuPont was constantly up his ass. When Mark met John, he was far from impressed. DuPont was physically gross and seemed intoxicated. I wrote this crime line, by the way. So during the tour of Villanova, however, Mark realized just how much money DuPont had and was willing to spend on wrestling. DuPont had several buildings on the Villanova campus already named after him. So that's how much money he'd been giving to Villanova. He basically ran this school during this time.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Mark learned quickly that at Villanova how strange and manipulative John DuPont could be. There were several awkward drunken moments between him and DuPont. John was also not supposed to interfere with Mark's duties at Villanova, but he constantly did. Mark essentially became John's personal assistant, and as he basically ran Villanova himself.
Right, Mark became like his manager.
Right,
He became like the Villanova sports manager.
Mark was there to be the assistant wrestling coach, which basically he was becoming the head coach because John was not doing.
Right, because John was technically the head coach, right, on paper?
Actually, no, there was a
But
guy
didn't he?
that John ended up having Mark fire.
At first.
So there was a head coach there.
Very short period of time,
Mark was
though.
brought in to be the assistant coach, and John was there distracting Mark constantly, and basically make him run around and do all these duties for him, just be on a power trip.
Right.
DuPont broke every NCAA rule when it came to recruiting wrestlers as well. He made Mark fire the head coach on a whim, which is what we've been leading to. John viewed himself as the head coach, but didn't want to do or know any of the duties after this. So he had Mark fire the head coach, and then he basically DuPont put himself as the head coach, but didn't want to do any of the head coaching shit. He didn't want to clean the mats. He didn't want to run the program. He just wanted to have that on the title. you know, when people look up the program, he wanted him to say John DuPont, head coach.
What I'm guessing is that the head coach that was there that got fired was probably there before John DuPont, or at least before he
was.
took over the operation,
He was.
and he wasn't going to change for him. He wasn't going to bow down to him because he was probably getting a decent salary from the school,
this
right?
was discussed in the book, and what it was he was an underqualified head coach for a NCAA Division I school wrestling program. He was not capable of it, but he was hired by DuPont because he was basically a yes man that would do whatever DuPont wanted. And even after a while, DuPont got sick of it. I think probably because he wanted to have his name.
Oh shit!
first
It's the complete opposite of what I thought.
Right. Yeah. When you started saying that, I was like, no, wait, the book brought this up.
Okay, I didn't remember that part.
And at least Mark speculated that's why he thinks that guy got the job, because Mark said he really didn't think that guy was qualified to be doing that job.
Gotcha. And then when he saw Mark and saw someone who actually knew what the hell they were talking about, he was like, let's get this guy out of here.
Yeah, that's a good point. Once he hired Mark and realized Mark was also being a yes man for him, and he was actually
And he's
qualified to
knowledgeable.
be a wrestling
Right. And he's
coach
connected
like
to
that.
Dave, who was probably the real prize in the midst of all this.
John then allowed Mark to choose a training partner to be paid by DuPont in order to help him prepare for the Worlds. Basically, Mark went up to him and asked him, you know, I need someone legit in here to help me prepare for the Worlds. So can you hire a guy? We'll call him assistant coach, and I'll just get to wrestle with him all the time so that I can prepare.
Right.
He let him choose, and Mark chose Dan Chade, who would later be on Team Foxcatcher and play quite a role. And he was in the documentary being interviewed quite a bit.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about Dan Chade later. Meanwhile, back at the DuPont estate, John had added wrestling to the Foxcatcher program, and this is where he builds that incredible facility for wrestling that we were talking about. He had a 14,000 square foot state-of-the-art wrestling building built and put into the Foxcatcher farm. It costed $600,000 to construct.
That's incredible. And these guys
in
had
the
seen
80s.
nothing like this too, man.
Right.
This was the main attraction
Yeah.
for all these wrestlers.
I mean, this place had a training room with a guy that was fully paid to just basically help them get over injuries and treat them.
Basically like an athletic trainer.
Yeah,
Like
an
a
athletic
physical
trainer.
therapist.
Yeah, it had a
something
guy
like
on
that.
staff to do
Yeah.
that. It had a full weight room. It had a sauna. It had, you name it, incredible. It had Olympic level mats, which couldn't have been cheap. It had I think it was 480 by 80 mats or something like that, like 80 foot by 80 foot Olympic
Jesus.
level mats. Like this, you saw the videos of inside
yeah.
this thing. It was a warehouse with mats. Like
It's incredible.
there could have been 300 people wrestling at once on these mats. It seemed like it was that big. Wrestler Rob Calabrese would be the first to join Foxcatcher wrestling program, and Mark Shultz the second. Soon, Dave Shultz would join as well, being paid as an assistant coach while still being paid to coach at Wisconsin as well. So Dave was kind of there in and out when he could, but he was paid by Wisconsin to be a coach, so he couldn't be there all the time. When Mark Shultz won another world championship in 1987, he became the first Olympic champion to add 2 additional world titles. This time, however, he'd been a part of Team Foxcatcher, and DuPont used it as a means to spread the word about how great Foxcatcher was, and really looked at him as like an object. Like this was started to where Mark really started to turn. He never really liked DuPont, but he saw him as useful for for his goals in life, trying to get to titles and stuff. But now he's like, I'm getting the goal. I'm meeting the goals that I wanted. I'm winning world titles. I'm working towards more Olympic medals. But now DuPont's taking credit for all my success. And so what is it even worth it?
Here's the thing though. They're both using each other.
They are. Yes, that's true. That is very true.
I mean, at this point, Mark's
not
be like,
looking
oh,
at that
he's
side of
using
it.
me. Well, damn, Mark, you're using him.
Do you expect him
as
to
your well-being?
Yeah,
too,
I mean,
at the same time.
Of course, DuPont is about Foxcatcher.
Yeah.
Mark is about Mark Schultz. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the reason he's able to live comfortably financially is because of DuPont. And so, of course, DuPont's when Mark wins something, he's gonna put Foxcatcher's name on it.
That's fair, dude. That's fair.
It actually is kind of fair now that I think about it. But it creeped Mark out, and he didn't like it. There was a photo shoot that DuPont made Mark do right afterwards, and he put Foxcatcher all over it, and it was like Mark in an American, what do you call it, singlet.
Yeah.
And there's a picture still out there. But it just creeped him out how he threw Foxcatcher all over it, and he felt though all the work he'd put in his whole life was kind of attributed to Foxcatcher as though it was them all along. It's like, I don't know. I see both sides of it.
Well,
Mark was great before Foxcatcher. We understand that.
Right.
But he is now. a part of the team.
He's a part of Foxcatcher.
He is.
I mean, NASCAR drivers don't take off all their advertisement shit when they get on the podium after they win.
Yes,
they're holding up stuff. They're handed a Pepsi. They're handed a Mountain Dew.
And
whatever
we know
the fuck
that,
it is, or champagne.
And we know that they're the great driver, and that won it.
Absolutely.
We know the great driver won it. We know Mark Schultz won
That's
it.
their
We're not
whole
sitting here
life.
going,
They've probably been on a track of some sort.
he should have known that people weren't looking at it like that. They weren't looking at it like, oh, Foxcatcher's the only reason Mark won this title.
no.
We know it's because of his hard work.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's his ego, I guess, was.
Yep. You got it.
But he also saw creepy sides to DuPont before.
Well, there
this,
were
and
creepy sides
There
to
was
DuPont.
more to it than just that.
Yeah.
Maybe if he liked DuPont more, he wouldn't have bothered him, the Foxcatcher stuff. But he hated what DuPont represented to begin with. So knowing so much about Foxcatcher is what the problem was. That's why he hated the name on there, because he
Right.
hated what DuPont stood
But see,
for.
like most people that saw that picture didn't think twice about that.
Right.
They probably just saw Mark in an American singlet and was like, "No, awesome, a world champion."
Yeah. Mark had a couple quotes about this. He said, "We were his newest trophies. If you didn't want to be displayed on his wall, he would threaten to ruin you."
Yeah, I could see that.
We got
And he had a lot of power.
we got some Air Force jets going over right now.
Yeah, we do.
Pretty close to an Air Force base, by the way. So we got horses and jets.
Real professional out here.
Real professional.
Real professional.
We need a $600,000 podcast studio, DuPont. Come on.
Yeah, where you at, Dupe? Oh, wait, never mind.
In the grave.
Awkward.
In the grave. John wanted the wrestlers to refer to him as Eagle because this is when he's really going to his head. Foxcatcher's got some success to its name now.
Yeah.
And so everybody had to call him Eagle. And there's actually footage of.
And they did.
Yeah, they did. There's
did.
footage of Dave calling him Eagle and Dan Chade calling him Eagle. They had a lot of footage of like the glory days of Foxcatcher.
They looked
in
like
that
they
film.
were kind of having fun
They're
for the
flying
most
around in
part,
private
right?
jets together, joking around with DuPont.
Yeah.
But I know DuPont must have sensed it because everybody but Dave. We'll get into this era in a little bit, but just now that it's on my head, it's on my mind. It's like I feel like he must have known that there was like a lot of tongue in cheek when they're like, "Hey, Eagle, don't hurt me," like these fucking.
There's a lot of
world-class
patronizing
wrestlers.
going on.
There's patronizing going on.
Yeah,
You could
there's a
sense
lot
it.
of
And
that.
DuPont was not a dumb guy. He was weird, eccentric, but he was also very intelligent. And so, like, he knew, like, these people were only around him because they had to be. And, like, just like his whole life. His whole life. He must have thought back to that kid that his mom paid, the butler's son or whatever, to be around him. And then he found out he was just around because he was getting paid.
I think that's the...
But the exception was Dave. Dave was the exception, which we'll get into, which made this so much more tragic, was that Dave was genuinely, like, didn't mind DuPont's company and I think he loved him to an extent, like an uncle or something at a certain point.
He cared for him.
He cared for him.
Do you think that's the biggest price that rich people pay, is just not knowing if someone really likes them?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
One of the bigger,
like
that and everybody
financially-
trying to sue you all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Like most people...
And no one respecting you for the hard work. If you do hard work, no one's going to attribute any of your success to that. They're going to say, oh, you already had money. Or
Absolutely. That's the price you pay, though. Everyone pays a price, I guess, of some sort. But that not knowing...
Would you rather be poor?
I'm pretty happy being like where I'm at, man.
Yeah, me too.
You know, I've really thought about it. And like more money, more problems. You know what I mean?
True that.
Like, with that being said, hey, tell your friends about Patreon, though. Like,
Yeah, man. Because we're working hard for that money. So
we are working hard for that money.
So he wanted all the wrestlers to call him Eagle because he was the golden eagle of America. And he even had a bed in his office in the wrestling facilities with sticks like around the bed to resemble a bird's nest. That's how much, how far he went
now that I
with it.
think about it, he was kind of bird-like.
Yeah, for sure. He had a beak nose.
He had a big nose.
For sure. Yeah, he was very bird-like.
Yeah, he was, right?
Had some wings to him, man.
Yeah. He had that bird build.
Yeah,
man.
This was a creepy part of the book. Mark claims that around this time, DuPont was getting really into wrestling himself. By the way, he wanted to be one of the wrestlers. He would wrestle with them, and they'd obviously have to be very careful not to break him.
Yeah. Because he's up there in age. He's quite a bit older than these guys.
At this time.
Yeah.
And he came up with his own wrestling move. He called it the Foxcatcher 5. It was actually, he had heard a story of a wrestler grabbing someone by the balls, and it was called the 5-finger something. And so he just added Foxcatcher to it. And it's essentially his favorite move was just to grab a wrestler by the balls. I think it's because he wasn't good at wrestling in general, and he's going against Olympic level wrestlers.
Yeah, you got to take any advantage you can get, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of allegations that he was gay. Do you think there's any clout to that? I don't. He was briefly married, we have to mention. It lasted like a month. And it could have been for an image if he was gay, but I don't know. I think he was effeminate partially because of his hormone levels, because of the testicle thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was very strange. I think he latched on to really like masculine men because he wanted to be like them, but I don't know if he was actually gay. I don't know if I buy that.
I mean,
the movie Foxcatcher, which was Mark had a legit
painted him that way, huh?
Mark had a legit complaint because the movie really painted Mark Shultz to be like this. I don't know. It was like almost like he was afraid of DuPont or something in the movie. It almost felt like he looked up to DuPont so much, but it did in his own words. And when you read this book and you see it, it just didn't seem like that was really the way it was. It seemed like Mark was the alpha around DuPont all the time, and he really couldn't stand DuPont, but he was just there because he had to be.
But that's also Mark's point of view.
Yes, that's true.
And it's also, it would be stupid to bite the hand that feeds too. I feel like.
But when I watched the footage from the documentary Team Foxcatcher on Netflix,
it looks like everybody kissed his ass to me.
But in a different way. They weren't. They didn't fear him when he walked in the room.
No, absolutely didn't.
When he
fear
walked
him.
in the room, he was clearly at the bottom of like the food chain. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but they still treated him good.
They kissed his ass in a way you would kiss a boss you don't respect's ass. Like, different from the movie where it seemed like the movie made it seem like he walks in and everybody's like, "Oh shit, there he is!" Like, don't say the wrong thing or like.
Oh yeah, it's not.
He's
like
got this big aura to him when he walked in. He didn't have a big aura when he walked in.
Did Steve Carell lose weight for it? Because Steve Carell's kind of a stocky dude.
Yeah, he trimmed up.
He must have,
and they added some facial stuff to make his nose
even recognize
different.
him in the trailer.
They gave him the beak nose.
Oh my god! In the trailer, I didn't.
He did a
recognize
phenomenal
him.
job. There's no denying the acting. That was the caliber of acting. It was more the writing and the directing that I had an issue with. I don't know if they captured the right. I don't know. Watch the documentary and then watch the film and tell me what you think on Twitter or whatever. But I just feel like they kind of got it wrong as far as the behavior of the people around each other. I don't think Mark behaved the way he behaved in the movie around DuPont.
And
I
what
think
sucks
it was different. I think it was a different dichotomy. It was a different vibe than the movie made it feel like.
What sucks is we don't have any Mark in the documentary to compare either, which kind of sucks.
True.
We don't get to see
we
the
get
way
to see Dave with.
We get to
Dave's
see
such a different guy.
Yes, we get to see the way Dave carries himself. We get to actually hear Dave's conversations, the way he speaks, his diction and things like that. But with Mark, we don't get any of that.
Yeah.
And the only evidence we have of the way Mark acted and the stories that he had were in the book, written by Mark. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I wonder who they got for the movie. Mark helped with the movie, right? Did he not help with the movie?
I think they definitely.
He was an advisor at least?
Yes, I think they went to him for.
And probably Valentine.
Information. Valentine for sure, yeah.
Who we haven't even mentioned yet.
No, well, he
The
plays
Russian
a big
wrestler.
role in this.
Yeah.
And made out like a bandit.
God damn, he sure did.
This is a weird point where DuPont began competing in senior wrestling matches and even paid to have one staged against like a Bulgarian champion. You remember that in the documentary? Where it was like this guy was like a legit old man wrestler, won titles and stuff. And it was so obvious when you watch the footage.
God.
It's like he just let
this dude.
How much did he get paid?
This dude could have picked DuPont up and literally break him in half.
Yeah.
He could have broke him in half
DuPont
so easily.
not only had no physical ability, but also didn't even use technique. You can hear in matches, Dave was by his side later on because he really got into like doing all these competitions with Dave as like his corner man. This is beyond when Mark.
Where Dave's like yelling advice to him and he's not taking any
just
of it.
Ignores all of it. He's like, "Don't put your head in there. Don't you?" Oh, there you put.
Let go of his head. Let go of his head.
Right? Yeah, he's just headlocking people, and it's like Dave's like, "Let go." He won't let go. Don't you're giving him your leg. Stop.
Stop.
He does not listen because of course DuPont knows better. He knows everything.
Right?
Yeah, so that was like a little bit later on, but we're getting close to the point where Mark has had enough and he leaves the farm, and that's when Dave goes full time to the farm.
Yeah.
But yeah, he started competing in all these wrestling matches we'll talk about. He also created an award ceremony for himself called the Citizens Athletes Awards, at which he was presented awards by athletes that he paid to present awards to him for himself. So he would stand
it's
up on the
held
podium
slightly
and get
higher
this
than the Dundies.
right.
Got him.
Perfect. It's slightly higher regard than the Dundies.
Right.
In 1986, DuPont fired Mark from his assistant coaching position at Villanova after Mark had thrown a party at his apartment where alcohol and underage wrestlers were present. DuPont told Mark that he could remain a part of Foxcatcher if he moved onto the farm to train full-time. Mark reluctantly agreed, so he basically blackmailed him into moving on to the farm and living there full time so that he could have control over him.
Now, from
Mark, after getting
the
fired
book,
from his job, had no other options, really. He was
Right.
getting health insurance from his job and everything, so really he
Right.
kind of cornered him.
Now, Mark even had said in the book that one of his vices was he did like to party.
Yeah.
Like he would work hard, but when it
Party hard, too.
it was wrestling off season, yeah, he was party hardy. So
In August 1988, a problem-plagued wrestling program he funded at Villanova was finally shut down. So he was still running this Villanova wrestling program that was a joke
yeah,
because he was the head coach, not doing his duties, and
it was close to his estate.
Yeah.
honestly, in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, and so he just decided to shut that down and focus on Foxcatcher Farms wrestling program, which was growing more and more. In December 1988, a lawsuit which was settled out of court claimed DuPont had made improper sexual advances to Villanova assistant coach Andre Metzger. So a little bit more clout to the gay thing.
I wonder how much of that revolves around the whole the Foxcatcher 5 move there.
Right.
You know what
Maybe
I
he
mean?
was just desperate to do anything that would work against a real wrestler. So
Right.
he kept grabbing dudes' balls and they were like, all right, enough already.
Yeah, exactly. Because like now, 2019.
There's also a move called
Bro.
checking the oil where you put your thumb in their butt
yeah,
to like get control. Like you
Right.
grab their butt cheek.
yeah.
Yeah. It's a legit move. I guess Randy
Yeah.
Couture used to use it a lot.
Oh, really?
The natural, the natural's doing the oil check on
That's
you.
a
You don't
natural
want that.
move there. Yeah,
It's only
damn.
natural to do the oil check, you know?
Oh God.
I'm still getting over being sick, guys. That's why we missed last week. If you can't tell from my nasty voice and my constant coughing and throat clearing.
Oh, I know you sound great.
Good stuff. Yeah, we've had to pause a lot for that. And while living on the estate, Mark witnessed DuPont's extreme dive into cocaine use and more evidence that he was in cahoots with the police. One of these big bags of cocaine that Mark witnessed him using, which actually Mark partook with him. They did coke together at one point.
Yeah.
But he noticed that one of the big bags of coke that DuPont had was like an evidence bag from a police evidence room, like evidence locker, like.
Awkward.
Because he'd actually been given a badge and was paid a $1 per year salary to be like what do they call that?
Like some sort of deputy, like a
An
second
unofficial member of the
deputy
police force or
thing.
whatever.
Yeah.
He was given a fucking
Can't remember
badge
what
and
they
he would
call it.
flaunt
God
this
damn it.
badge everywhere. He would actually use it to get into places free. He went to a wrestling tournament
Yeah, of
and
course.
flashed his badge to get in so he could avoid like the $4 cover charge to get in. Like, and this guy's a fucking multimillionaire.
Avoid the $4
An asshole. Yeah. Yeah, he had an evidence bag of cocaine that he was sniffing on. In 1988, he lost his mother, and it's said that his sanity began to crumble further after this. However, Mark actually denies this and says that he saw no change in John. John was already crazy. Nothing really changed. If anything, he was now allowed to be himself more, and that maybe it didn't break him down mentally like the loss of his mother. It was more just like he now had even more free reign with the money and the farm to do what he wanted.
Oh, okay. So more let
Less-
the animal out of the cage, not
Less
so much
him,
of a change.
Yeah, less him broken up and mourning about his mother and more just like, all right, now let's really get crazy because they
Yeah.
got more resources available.
Exactly.
Mama ain't here to stop me. It was that same year that Mark had finally had enough and left the farm for good after he finished 6th place at the 1988 Summer Olympics in Seoul. And how he lost is
He threw the match.
it's he
He didn't even try.
He claims, I mean, this is his word, but he claims he threw it in order to make Foxcatcher look bad. He was tired of giving all the credit to Foxcatcher when he won, and
I kind of believe that, dude. To
yeah.
lose 14-0.
yeah, he says he threw his final match 14-0 in order to send a message to USA Wrestling. It was not as even entirely about Foxcatcher. It was like, see what you guys have made me done, USA Wrestling. You've made me rely on a guy like John DuPont and Foxcatcher.
It was a protest, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, if it weren't for you guys not funding us, I wouldn't have to basically go work for this creep. Who's dangerous because he's seeing more and more erratic behavior from John DuPont on the farm and more controlling behavior and manipulation. He's dealing with all this shit. John's told him, he's promised him, I'm going to ruin your career when they got into an altercation. And
Every time he held that over his head.
he would constantly. That's the whole firing thing with the underage drinking. He saw that was an example of John DuPont seeing a chance to ruin him. Got him fired, kind of besmirched his name. with that whole thing. Because I mean, really, it was not a big deal. It was some wrestlers that were a couple years under 21. They were hanging out,
Yep.
having some beers or whatever. And of course, John DuPont saw that as an opportunity to try and ruin him and get more power over him, make him move to the farm and everything.
Absolutely.
We mentioned that John was married very, very briefly for only like a month. And after the divorce, she made many claims about John, that he had thrown her into a fireplace, that he had thrown her out of a car, he had threatened her with a knife and put a gun to her head with accusations that she was a Russian spy.
I believe all of that.
I 100% believe it all.
Yeah.
I think he really started to, with all the excessive drug use, he was said to not be sleeping. Wrestlers that lived at Foxcatcher said that, like, they would take rotations going to hang out with him at the mansion just to kind of keep him company. And all of them said that he never slept. Like, they would be downstairs and he'd just be upstairs pacing.
Well,
He was going into psychosis. He was basically became a schizophrenic near the end.
You know what though? I said earlier that I feel like the real price that rich people pay is the not knowing about friends and things like that, but also the paranoia that someone wants to take it from you. It's got to be intense.
A lot of rich people get paranoid,
Yes.
and rightfully so.
I seen an interview with Post Malone. He talked about how he basically has insomnia. Like since he's gotten rich,
I was gonna say
he stays
also
up
a guy
all
that
night.
doesn't sleep. Literally has always tired on his fucking face and tattoos.
Like because he never sleeps. He's paranoid that someone's gonna break in his house and take his shit. And then the bad thing about it is the longer you stay awake, the more paranoid you get, the more insane you get, the more detached.
Yep.
It's a hard way to live, and especially if he's getting older. He just lost his mom, so he's the last DuPont, right?
No, I think he still had siblings. He still had like a sister that would come visit and stuff like that.
Yeah, but they're not living there. They're
No,
not there to help.
He's the one maintaining the estate and everything.
Yeah.
He's like the main heir. Yeah, the
800
last son.
acres, man. That's a lot of room
He
for
was the
somebody
only
to hide.
he was I think the only true son to the DuPont family heir or whatever, the one that could carry it on.
Okay.
That name.
Yeah.
I believe. I don't know. There could have been other DuPonts, like cousins and whatnot. I don't know. By December 1988, Mark Shultz had finally had enough and left the farm for good. He actually peeled out in his car, leaving a long skid mark in the lawn in front of the mansion. I fucking love that image. He's like, I'm fucking out of here.
Mark would do that shit too. He's just the right
So
hothead.
good,
He would do
right?
that shit.
He actually, right after leaving, really made like he felt his life was so ruined. He didn't know where to go. He just started driving kind of aimlessly.
Yeah.
He ended up in Colorado Springs because he knew of a great wrestling coach that he'd always admired. Happened to be in Colorado Springs, and he went there not knowing the guy, just hoping the guy would take him in, and he did.
God damn, what a
But-
time to be alive.
Right, but shortly after he left, he blamed like his life going downhill so much on DuPont. He actually thought about killing him. Like he actually came up with an elaborate plan. Did you hear that part of the book?
Yeah.
Where he said he was going to get a crossbow.
Yep.
And he knew the exact bush on the property.
He
It
had-
was just far enough
He
away
was
from the
practicing
mansion.
archery. Like he was.
And he was going to try and get away with it. He
Yeah.
was going to sneak onto the fucking estate and
Yep.
hide in a bush and shoot him with a crossbow. Not fatally. He was going to walk up on. He wanted John to suffer.
Yeah,
He
he
said
did.
he was going to walk up on John and pump a few more arrows into him as John pleaded for his life. I was like, damn, that's fucking dark, bro.
That is dark.
Like I get it that you don't like the guy and you think he ruined your life, but damn, that's some cold-blooded shit.
Yeah. So maybe DuPont had a right to be so paranoid. Never mind. Now that I think about it,
That's a
I
good point.
think I would stay awake too.
Mark said that he'd felt as though he'd escaped a cult after leaving there because
I could see that.
he got back to normal life in Colorado Springs as a coach at the wrestling program and stuff. And
Yeah.
he realized how much control that DuPont had over. He realized how bad it truly. He knew it was bad, but once he got out, he realized even how much more it was bad.
He was above the police.
Because he had relief now. He was like, "Oh shit, I'm not under this cloud of Foxcatcher." You know.
Mm-hmm.
Not long after Mark left, however, DuPont lured in his brother Dave to live and coach at the farm full time. Offered him $70,000 per year to come be a coach there.
Good ass money in the late 80s.
Hell yeah! And he gave him.
You cannot blame Dave for taking this, man.
And you move to this amazing estate that's 800 acres, and basically
Gorgeous.
he gave Dave a home to live in, which was like 2,500 square feet, 2-story home, a full mile away from DuPont's mansion on the other side of the property.
Yep.
With woods right next to it, where Dave loved to hunt. He could go out and hunt in his spare time. He gets the access to this amazing wrestling facility, some of the best wrestlers in the world, where he still had goals. He still wanted to win another gold in Olympics.
Yep.
And
Not
so-
to mention the safety and the peace of mind
Yeah.
of having your family on this estate. Like it was nice for him.
We saw a lot of the footage in the documentary
And the
where it
house
looked
was
like it was
beautiful, man.
was an ideal life for these wrestlers for a while.
Yep.
You know, they just had this kind of unfortunate weird guy that would come around and they'd have to deal with him and cater to him. And
Yeah.
like we said, Dave, though, didn't mind it for a while. We're getting into that part of the story.
I
But
don't think Dave minded it ever. That's the thing.
up
Did
until
he?
the end, he started
You
getting
think?
afraid for his safety and his family's safety. But he had the Olympics in mind, that he had to get through that.
Yeah, but wasn't he quoted as saying, if I felt like my family was not safe or I felt like my kids were in danger, I wouldn't think for a second. I would leave.
Yeah.
He was quoted as saying that right up until the very end, was he not?
Maybe that was before certain things happened.
Okay.
I don't know. Dave by now had a wife named Nancy and 2 kids. The wife Nancy was the one he'd met in college that we talked about, who he was very modest with. Like, yeah, I wrestle. And yeah, now he had 2 kids, a boy and a girl, Danielle and Alexander, who would also live on the farm. Yeah, he was given this 2,500 square foot 2-story house, beautiful forest behind it, hunting and activities. Family loved it. Other wrestlers' families, they had like a commune almost. Like there was other wrestlers who lived on the farm in their own little homes.
Yeah, it's
Dan Chade was one of them. So like he's there living with his buddies. All they do is wrestle. Their families are there. They're in a seems like a safe, beautiful environment.
It's like their own little Jonestown.
Yeah, yeah, it kind of is. It is very culty. By now, John had added some of the world's best wrestlers to Team Foxcatcher. Dan Chade, who we keep mentioning, Rob Calabrese, Dave Lee, Valentin Jordanov, who plays a huge role in this, a Russian wrestler who
Yes.
Dave had always respected. Dave actually recruited him to come to Foxcatcher from Russia because he respected this guy so much.
Dave knew Russian, by the way. He learned Russian.
Yes.
Just so he could
such an
learn
interesting
from
guy.
Russian wrestlers. Yeah.
Such an interesting guy. And that drove a big wedge between Dave Shultz and John DuPont.
Because DuPont also liked Valentin.
Valentin Jordanov shows up, who Dave recruited to come there because they had such a mutual respect.
Right.
DuPont had this infatuation with Dave for a long time. The first few years that Dave was living on the farm and everything was peachy and hunky-dory. They're traveling around to wrestling matches, not only for Dave and the other wrestlers, but for DuPont's fake bullshit wrestling matches or matches that were real where he was just getting beat up by an old man. It was pretty sad. You can see footage of that. Everything's peachy. Valentin shows up, and I don't know. I have a kind of differing. I can't really figure out where I reside on this. As far as, do you think, because the documentary would make you believe that DuPont was really infatuated with Dave, and then when Valentin showed up, he switched that over to where he was obsessed with Valentin, always wanted to be around Valentin.
Right.
I almost wonder if that was because Dave and him had such a close relationship that I think he was still obsessed more with Dave, but he wanted Dave to feel the way he was feeling on the outside.
Yeah, I think it,
You know what I'm
it
saying?
could have been a part of that. Yeah. And it could also be the fact that, well, if Dave thinks this guy is great,
That too. could be.
then man, he must be really great.
But there's footage of them like riding around in a car together.
And-
Dave, Valentin, and John.
Yeah.
And like Dave and Valentin are in the back talking Russian, joking around, and John
Yeah.
is very jealous in the front seat. Very
Well,
awkward.
and-
they joke with him, but they can't tell whether John is
I
like
think-
how he's going to respond. Is he going to
Yeah.
is he going to get angry?
Oh.
I love that footage in the car where it's
Yeah.
like you really see like, God, this guy is like, they would say that
he's a loose cannon, man. John
he is.
was.
John,
you never knew how he was going to
They
react.
said the whole vibe of the farm depended on his like outlook on that day.
Yeah.
His behavior. Like sometimes he would show up, he'd be in a great mood, and everything was awesome. This
Yeah.
is why we're here. We love this. And then the next day, John would show up, and it was like,
Energy vampire.
yeah, it just
Yeah.
sucked the life out of everything. Like, is he gonna be fucking carrying a gun, drunk around today? Like,
Right.
shooting a hole in the roof of the fucking wrestling room,
Yeah.
threatening people. Quote from Kevin Jackson, who was an Olympic gold medalist in Barcelona in 1992 and member of Team Foxcatcher, one of the greatest wrestlers in the world during the time, just a jacked black dude. Kevin Jackson was a bad
yes, I
motherfucker.
remember him in the documentary.
Yeah.
Yes, he
interesting
was a
way.
beast.
It was interesting how he got kicked out of Foxcatcher, surely for his skin color.
Yeah,
We'll
and
get
it
to
had
that.
nothing to do with race. It was
Nothing
just
to do with anything.
oddly enough, you'll see.
Yeah, it sounds like that.
Yeah.
Couldn't be, but yeah. Quote from Kevin Jackson: "If it wasn't for Dave being at Foxcatcher, nobody else would have gone. He was a legend, just one of the best wrestlers in the world at the time. There was no one else who carried himself like Dave. He was an ambassador for the sport, a one of a kind, someone a lot of people called friend."
I think that's an understatement.
Yeah.
I think almost everybody that ran into Dave.
He was the straw that stirred the drink. He was the glue that held Foxcatcher together. He kept, and he was a lot of times the guy that would talk John down when he was in one of those bad moods.
Yes.
He came in and he sucked the life out of the room. It would be Dave that would go over there, and he had this lightheartedness to him where he would kind of like, he could flip John's mood too. Like
He could
be like, John, let's like
knew
have
how
that
to talk to
smile,
him.
and like all of a sudden John's like, you know what, you're right, and like would calm down.
Yeah.
And like the freaking armor would come down.
Yeah.
And I think because a lot of times John probably thought everyone was making fun of him, and Dave would go over like, dude, it's not like that.
It's all,
It's
yeah,
not like
it's
that.
all,
It's
we're
all
a
in your head.
family here.
Yeah, it's all in your head. It's not like that. Which it was a lot of times, except that Dave didn't want it to be like that. I think Dave really wanted everyone to respect John. And
Yeah, I do think that Dave was being genuine in
He
his
was.
explanations, but the other wrestlers were being patronizing to John.
They
I mean,
were.
but I mean, how would you
they're
not
meatheads.
be?
They're
Like,
meatheads.
how would you not be?
They were fucking.
Like you got to stay in your lane. Like
Yeah.
if John would have just carried himself, if he would have showed up in like a suit
Thank
and was
you.
like, "What do you guys need? What do you get?" Like, and just been.
And even if
the
he wanted to wrestle
business-
with him, but he knew his place as far as like,
Yes.
look, guys, just be easy with me.
Yeah.
But he really thought he was one of them. Like,
Exactly.
when he wrestled with him, they would have to let him win, because if they didn't, they were afraid he was going to lose his shit.
Yes, because he really thought he
Couldn't
was
accept
wrestling.
that he was lesser than. He just couldn't, in that realm. He could not accept that.
Right.
Very strange. So that's of course why they're gonna, like, if you take yourself too seriously and you suck at something, people are gonna, behind your back, they're gonna make fun of you, like, this guy really thinks he's one of us.
You can't. Yeah, you can't do that.
Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane.
Once again. Dave living on the farm full-time added stability and leadership to Foxcatcher, and the team thrived while he was there. He also felt compassion for DuPont, urging understanding when others condemned the millionaire's wild behavior. Dave and his family saw John like a lonely uncle that just wanted companionship. They would spend a lot of time at the mansion with John and have him over to their house on the farm as well quite often. They spent holidays together. Like, the kids were always around John, and like there's video of them like cutting turkeys together, and like
Yeah.
this thing went on successfully for years. But there was signs. There was always signs something was going to go wrong. The police were receiving over the years multiple calls about John's dangerous behavior, and just kind of
Yes.
let it slide. Oh, that's just John, you know. Yeah, he
Because
got
someti-
drunk and fired a gun in the house again.
Yeah.
That's just John, you know. and
Or
it's
threatened a wrestler or
He
something
wouldn't
like
harm a
that.
fly, though. Bullshit, dude. At a certain point, you got to start taking some of this shit seriously.
Absolutely.
He's gonna hurt. Everybody knew he would eventually hurt somebody. He began competing in wrestling at the age of 55. Again, John, after like the last time he had wrestled was back in high school, I believe, for a minute. Wasn't it?
Oh wow! Like actually competing.
Yeah. Began competing again at 55 in the 1992 Veterans World Championships in Cali, Colombia. Following that, in 1993 in Toronto, Ontario. In 1994 in Rome, Italy. So they're just traveling around the world so that he can have his fake little wrestling career and
That's incredible.
either get beat up by old guys or stage an event where he actually wins, and it's just
Exactly.
so obviously staged.
Because these guys make more to lose to John DuPont than they ever would winning the competition. So they're like, yeah, I'll take an L for this.
I'll take
Shit.
a dive to this weirdo. Every day, however, John was slipping further into madness with all of his drug use and drunkenness. He began frequently carrying loaded weapons around the farm, firing at random objects, once firing through the gymnasium ceiling during team training, as we alluded to earlier. On another occasion, he injured a road maintenance worker in a hit-and-run incident. There were several occasions where he was said to have driven his car into the lake on the property for no real reason. No one could really figure out why.
So strange. He
No one
did
could really
that.
figure out why.
Claimed it was an accident. Got the exact same car delivered.
Back to the property.
And then there
Did
was
it again,
someone there, though. There was someone of importance there. And just to show them how unimportant he thought they were riding with him. And then he drove it into the lake with them in the car. Like, the dude is insane. When I heard that part of the documentary, I was like, what the fuck? It's like a brand new Lincoln. And he's just like driving. What the hell?
He was such a serious guy too, though. Like, what's crazy is all this stuff sounds silly. He was so
Yeah.
deadly serious when he did all this stuff.
Yeah, what if he
You
was
see
just
the
driving
footage
and
of
he was
him,
like,
and he's just dead-eyed serious, like walking around. Like,
yeah. He was probably like,
He
this
had the
car,
strut.
this car is also a submarine. Let me show you.
he had like a cocky strut, like he was like a great athlete too. You know, the way he walked around
Yeah.
was like he was a serious man about business.
Well, when you have that money flag hanging above your head, dude,
Yeah.
you feel very powerful.
His behavior also became increasingly paranoid. He shot a flock of nesting geese just because he believed they were casting spells on him.
Yeah.
He removed
Good call.
This is when you get into the paranoid schizophrenic stuff. He removed treadmills and exercise bikes from the gymnasium because he believed the timers on them were turning back time.
Gosh.
He heard, he believed there was stuff in the walls that was like microphones were recorded. That's very schizophrenic.
He spent so much money having these quote unquote experts like come to his house and check the walls.
The security guy that was there the day of the murder,
Yes.
that was in his car, was a guy that was completely just taking advantage of the situation financially. Because John must have been paying this so-called security company a whole lot of money to go around his property, doing on a whim whatever he said. I think there's a microphone in the ground right there. And they would bring out excavation, they'd bring a backhoe and start digging up his yard like, oh, nothing there, John. I'll take my money now.
Yeah.
They started they started going through the walls of his house.
John's just ripping out checks. Here you go. Check that wall.
Dude,
Check
that guy
wall.
in the documentary, they interviewed the security guy
They did, yeah.
that was running this fucking program. And he...
Mopping up,
Dude,
boy.
he even had a smirk when he was talking about this. He's like, hey, if John wanted me to confirm that there was no microphones in his walls, who am I to stop him from paying me thousands of dollars to tear apart his walls and then put them back together?
Yeah.
Who am I?
Yeah.
I just wanted to give the guy peace of mind and get a whole lot of money doing it.
Exactly.
The guy literally had a smirk on his face.
Oh, yeah, he did.
You got to watch it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Dave, now in his mid-30s, set his sights on the 1996 Olympics. People were kind of questioning whether he could actually make a run at this thing again, but I don't think there's too much doubt. If there's anyone that could do it, it was him. You know
I think
what I mean?
Dave could do it.
In his mid to late 30s,
Dude, he still
pull
looked
off
the
another-
same to me. He still looked, he was still in shape.
Yep.
He still looked in his right mind.
Still a technical assassin when it came to the mats, and that's really...
Still in practice. It's not like he wasn't wrestling anymore. He's still wrestling every day.
Yeah. He was hoping to give it one last shot at a gold medal, and that's kind of what was keeping him there, because he's seeing all these signs too. He's starting to become afraid for his safety and his family's safety on the farm, but also he felt a responsibility to train these other wrestlers at Foxcatcher. He felt like if he left, where does that leave them? You know, this is their livelihood.
Right.
They now have a roof over their heads, and they're getting to do their passion every day.
That's a great point, dude. Dave must have felt some sort of responsibility for all of those wrestlers because they were all there because of him. And they even said that. They're like, we're all here because of Dave. If Dave wasn't here, I wouldn't come. Dave was here. You know, nobody would come.
Yep.
Valentine wouldn't have come. Nobody would have.
No. Yeah, Dave knew by now that he couldn't stay on the farm much longer because John was even beginning to scare him and his family could be at risk. He was planning to leave after the 1996 Olympics. Let's get to the Dan Chade thing, which kind of just pushed this further, the detention on the farm.
Oh, yes, where he wanted Dan to move?
Yeah. So John was frequently, always around with the smell of alcohol in his breath, evidence of cocaine use and pills. Friends and family tried to intervene to no avail. And that's when Dan Chade kind of stepped in. Quote, he said, I'd say, John, you really need help pretty soon, but he'd close you out because he didn't want to hear that. And so Dan's trying to, get involved and trying to help the guy.
Yeah.
After an incident in October 1993, Chade also spoke to the police. He said, quote, I was working out in the weight room. DuPont came in and pulled a gun on me and said, don't you fuck with me. I want you off the farm, in a very aggressive way. I could tell he wasn't in the right state of mind. I cowered to him just enough to get him to back off. Then he left. I told the police. The next day I went to the local courthouse, put a report there, then the county courthouse. He was definitely getting closer and closer to doing something where somebody was going to get hurt. Dan Chade finally did leave the team shortly after that and moved off the farm. However, he returned, I don't know, it was like a week or two later to get his stuff. He brought a moving truck back to the farm because, he was staying in one of DuPont's houses on the farm, but he still had his stuff in the house. So he returns with a moving truck to get his stuff, and he kind of hangs out for the day. He's hanging out with...
Wait, didn't John have that U-Haul in front of his house?
What, I'm explaining what happened. So he brings the U-Haul truck over, right? John. That's right. John parked it in front of his house to send a message.
Yeah, he was like, here's your truck. Get your shit and get out.
That's right. John brought the truck there. Okay, but when Dan left, knowing he was in danger, came back in his personal vehicle to get his stuff, and basically John saw Dan Chade, after he had left the farm, he saw his personal vehicle sitting in front of Dave's house.
Yes.
And immediately the paranoia kicked in, like, what are they planning against me? Dave and Dan Chade are planning something against me.
And Dan wasn't even there.
Dan wasn't even there anymore. He had left in the moving truck.
He was in the moving truck,
The moving truck that John had put there for him.
Exactly. He just left his personal vehicle at Dave's just for safekeeping for the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, so that car, Dan Chade's car being in front of Dave's house set him off and really got the paranoia kicking in. He shows up later that night to Dave's house with a gun, loaded off alcohol, like drunk as fuck.
Oh, man, he's
shows
plastered.
Up. Keep in mind, Dave's family's inside this house. And Dave's immediately like, whoa, you can't have this gun here. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Takes the gun from him and talks him down, as Dave does. However, the word is basically the story goes, and even Dave's wife confirmed that he was so drunk. John was so drunk that he fell in the house and hit his head on something. I forget, it was like
Yes.
a
And then he
coffee table or something.
Then he forgot how that happened.
had a gash in his head.
Yeah.
And he was so hammered. The next day, he didn't know what had happened. He figured that Dave beat him up or something.
Yeah.
Which just doesn't match Dave's
Wait,
personality.
didn't he blame it on Dan again because he thought Dan was there?
It-
Because he never saw Dan.
Who knows?
Because
Who knows?
because he barely made it inside the door. So
Dan was already gone, I think. Too.
yeah, but what I'm saying is, I think John still.
Oh yeah, he probably fell in the
suspected that
doorway,
Dan
hit his head.
Yeah, and then was like, Dan fucking knocked me
Yeah.
out. Yeah,
Well,
he
you know,
showed
it's-
up with a shotgun too.
He showed up with a gun, drunk as fuck, falls, hits his head, and
Yeah.
and the next day doesn't know what happened. He's blaming it on Dave. Dave or Dan attacked him is
Yeah.
what he's thinking, and so the tension is now at a freaking fever pitch on the farm. Kevin Jackson was also aware of DuPont's declining mental health. Here's another quote from Kevin Jackson. Sometimes he'd say something a bit off the wall, and I was just and I would just not respond. He says, like, you're sitting there with his trophies, and he says one of them is moving, and then it means something just went through a hidden door into the house. There was also in the documentary he would talk about there were so many security cameras around the farm.
Yeah.
One of them was staring at the woods. One of these security, and he would just sit there for hours
Oh
and
my
stare at
God.
it. And he would have some of the wrestlers come over and be like, "Do you see that person moving through those trees?"
Yeah.
And they didn't know whether what to say because obviously they didn't see anything. But they were like, "Should I just appease him and say, yeah, I see it, or should I not? Is this some kind of test?" They never
Right.
knew what was going on in his head. No, he said he was always saying stuff was in the walls, talking to him, or there's microphones in
Dude,
the walls.
do you think like something what drove him crazy was just everyone trying to appease him his entire life, and then after a while
He's trying to question whether they're just going to go along with it to see if they're yes men or not.
maybe you start to think in John's case it seems though that everything you say is right.
Mm-hmm.
If everyone appeases you for every single thing because you have money, because they don't want to lose your funding, they don't want to lose your quote unquote friendship, then you start to think, well, shit, everything I say is right. So every inclination that I have must
Can't
be
be wrong,
correct.
right?
It must be.
Yeah.
And then you start having these crazy
And then you're up
inclinations.
all night doing cocaine.
And there you go. Yeah. And,
You never
and
sleep.
compounding it with alcohol.
You start
'cause
seeing things.
Everyone knows the more cocaine you do, the more alcohol you can drink and vice versa. And it's a whirlwind.
Yeah, if you're seeing hallucinations because you haven't slept in days
Yeah.
and you always think you're right because no one ever tells you you're wrong.
Yep.
You're seeing things for
Dude,
sure.
this-
Those are real things you're seeing.
Yeah.
Because how could they not be? I'm always right.
Right. Exactly.
Another quote from Kevin Jackson. He started carrying a pistol around and to be at the dinner table in the evenings, and I saw incidents of him shooting through the roof. I'd think, worst case scenario, he's going to shoot somebody. So whenever I walked into the house, I'd come in whistling and singing loudly. I didn't want him getting all surprised on me with a gun. Jesus. In 1995, Jackson said DuPont started eliminating anything black on the farm because he associated black with death. Quote, he was taking out black gym equipment. The coach was told he couldn't drive his black vehicle. I was told, yeah, he's kind of losing it. And the black thing, that includes you too.
Yeah.
So Kevin Jackson and the other black wrestlers on the farm were
he
then
wasn't
told
the
they had
only
to go.
one.
He wasn't the only one. There was other black wrestlers that were
Yep.
part of the team, and they were all let go at the same time because he now viewed black things as death. Or
Death.
dangerous.
Yeah. I think he was
Crazy.
afraid. He felt like death was following him around. Like
Yep.
it was getting closer to him. And yeah, everything black was gone.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Everyone knew, including U.S. Wrestling, everyone, that this guy was teetering on the edge. We all thought DuPont had issues and problems. Unfortunately, it all came to a head, and it all led to this day. On January 26, 1996, DuPont security consultant Patrick Goodell, the guy we talked about that was raking him over the coals and going on these
Yeah.
these goose hunts with him to try and find the walls that were talking to him and taking fat checks out of it.
Right.
Drove to the mansion for a 2 p.m. appointment. DuPont asked him to tour the estate with him to assess the damages from the recent winter storms and took his long-barreled .44 Magnum revolver with him. I'm sure the guy thought this is just another day. DuPont always carries a gun with him,
Right.
so I'm not thinking much about it. They ended up at Shultz's house, Dave Shultz's house, where the wrestler who was on the driveway tinkering with the radio in his Toyota Tercel turned and sauntered towards his boss with a smile. So yeah, Dave is just tinkering around in the driveway. John
Yeah.
pulls up in a car with the security guy in the passenger seat, And he's saying, oh, what's he up to? Aware of DuPont's increasingly erratic state, but never before on the receiving end of his madness, he had no reason to suspect anything untoward was afoot. So yeah, Dave's really never. It's not like he's had run-ins with, aside from the one drunken night.
Dave has seen the sides of John, but he's never been the target.
Yeah, that night where John came to his house, he was more looking for Dan Chade, I think, where he had his head and he was drunk and everything, and Dave was more worried, like, don't be bringing a gun to my house with my kids.
Yeah.
But yeah, he never really seen like a full-on threat towards him specifically, like Dan Chade had, where he'd had the gun pointed at his chest while he's working out.
Exactly.
So he walks over to the car, and without warning, DuPont picked up his gun, pointed it first at Goodell's face, then turned it on Shultz and fired. I said, John, what are you doing? Goodell testified at the trial. David screamed after the first shot. He fell. Goodell leapt from the car with his weapon and pointed it at DuPont. Our barrels met. Then he threw his gun on the seat and backed the car out, he then recalled. Inside Schultz's house, Nancy and his wife of 14 years had been clearing the dishes from a family lunch when she heard the husband scream. As his blood stained the snow on the driveway, she cradled his head in her hands. In a call to 911 operator, she said, John DuPont shot my husband. Why, the dispatcher asked. Because he's insane, she cried back. Later, she would have to break the news to her son, Alexander, 9, and daughter, Danielle, 6. That was one of the parts where I cried.
That was rough, man. That's rough to handle.
She described going down to the basement and telling their kids that John DuPont had shot their dad and he's dead. Brutal to tell a 6 and 9-year-old when they just saw their dad earlier that day, you know.
That's awful. Absolutely
brutal. But this depiction that Goodell is telling the security guy who was in the passenger seat doesn't seem to match up, because didn't DuPont get out and shoot him like 2 or 3 more times in the driveway too? He walked up to him and
shot him more than once.
He did. And he got out of the car and executed him. So I think Goodell was more acting like he was more of a hero, and he stopped him because I didn't hear that part except for from his perspective.
Exactly, me either.
It just doesn't seem to match
in all reality,
the ballistic evidence of Dave being shot multiple times.
In all reality, Goodell probably got out the car and ran.
I think he hid behind like the car. He got out and hid behind the car.
Yeah.
DuPont fled to his mansion, reloaded his gun, and locked himself in. Outside, 70 police officers and SWAT team members laid siege for 2 days. And you actually hear phone calls that they were making to him where he was saying, like, stand down. Like, basically, he thought he was God. Like, they couldn't even do anything to him.
That's right.
DuPont was finally captured after police switched off the heat to his home.
His little skinny ass, old ass was freezing in there.
Yeah, they drove him out of the house due to it being so cold after a 5-week trial. This is Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it's cold.
So, and I think it was when did we say the shooting took place? Was January.
Oh, he's
late
freezing
January.
His ass off.
Late January in Pennsylvania, and they turned the heat off to his house.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, so they drove him out, and he tried to like sneak out the back, and they caught him. After a 5-week trial, psychiatric experts testified that he was a paranoid schizophrenic convinced that Shultz was involved in a conspiracy to kill him. Jurors, however, found DuPont guilty of third-degree murder and mentally ill, but not insane. He was sentenced to 13.5 to 30 years and died in prison in 2010, age 72. No true motive was ever offered, however. I mean, we know. I think it's pretty much...
It's just paranoia.
I think the psychiatric experts, nailed it with the paranoid schizophrenic, convinced that Shultz was involved. And I think he was convinced that him and Dan Chade were up to something. It was a crash course with something violent was going to happen.
We've talked about it before. When you don't have any problems in your life, you create them.
Yeah.
I feel like with your life... If you don't have any type of strife or any
your
kind
brain
of difficulty,
is just wired that way, right?
It's almost like you look for it and you find it.
That's why you have to create little obstacles for yourself to overcome that are positive.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Create like fitness goals or create
that's why goals are so important.
To make it to a certain level at work or something like that where it's...
Yes. We naturally want to become better.
If you try to avoid all problems, your brain will make stuff. And I think that's where a lot of anxiety and stuff like that stems from.
And see, in John DuPont's case, he probably wasn't trying to avoid all problems. It was just easy for him.
Yeah.
Because the money was always there.
He could just throw money at it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. He had no real problems. So he had to create these ones in his mind.
Yeah.
It's a sad story, man.
It is. And we have a really good quote from quote.
It's from Jackson.
Yeah, Kevin Jackson.
Yeah.
The great wrestler Kevin Jackson that was kicked off the farm for being black. Quote, DuPont wanted people to credit him for creating champions, but in the end, he destroyed one of the greatest champions wrestling ever had. Dave's death was a tragedy on so many levels, and why it happened we'll truly never know. And he had one of the biggest funerals I've ever seen, man. Did the footage in the documentary showed it? It was just like one person after another coming up to the podium and basically saying the same thing, that he was a friend to all. He was one of the greatest wrestlers to ever live. He was a great family man, and just truly gone too soon, man.
Yeah, I agree.
And a great case. Thank you, Ethan, for recommending this case that we do this. We'd actually already had it on the docket to do, so I was like, all right, now we really got to do it, because now someone suggested it as well.
Great, now we have an excuse to move it up. All right, let's move it up.
Yeah, let's do it. And Ethan claims to be a distant relative of the Shultz brothers.
Oh, wow. Good blood, man.
Yeah, man.
Oh, yeah. All right, what do you do? Do you wrestle?
I was going to say, I bet you must be a badass wrestler just by nature.
He probably does something.
Even if you never wrestled, I'm sure you could shoot a double leg right now.
You should just try it. Hey, worst case scenario, man. Just do the old Foxcatcher 5 if you have to.
Right.
Fake it till you make it, right?
It's in the genes. Yeah.
It's in the singlets.
Right. Yeah, the Foxcatcher 5 is undeniable.
Works every time.
Deadly move. Unless you got launched off a horse onto a fence.
Right, unless you got plastic balls. So that's the story, man. That's the Foxcatcher, right?
So yeah, check out the film Foxcatcher. Check out definitely if you have Netflix, can't recommend it enough. Team Foxcatcher.
And it's on YouTube, even if you don't have Netflix.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
But it's a Netflix original movie.
The description is in Spanish, but the whole documentary is in English, and the subtitles are in English.
Yeah.
So I think they just posted it like that too.
If you're so inclined, if you're a wrestling nerd, if you wrestled in high school or college and you love the sport, definitely check out Mark Schultz's book.
Mark Schultz's book. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's largely about wrestling.
It is. It's about his journey, his training, even techniques. It's very in-depth about wrestling for sure.
Yeah. All right. We hope you guys enjoyed that.
All right, creepers. We are back in the present. This is now 2021. We hope you guys enjoyed that look back into the old Patreon exclusive vault. If you guys want to hear more things like that, remember, patreon.com patreon.com/truecrimeguys, right? Yeah, that's what it is. I only say it every week. Patreon.com/truecrimeguys. And for just $2 a month, you guys can get access to hundreds of other audio files that we already have on Patreon, just waiting for you to binge through and to your heart's content. Okay? And now Patreon offers yearly subscriptions, guys. So if you don't want to have the monthly bill, you can go on and pay $21.60 out the door if you're in the U.S. And that is 1 year at $2 a month. And you get a 10% discount as well for True Crime Guys. And each level, we have a $5 level and also a $10 level. And each level at the yearly subscription gets a 10% discount. So you save a little bit of money there, and you also don't have to worry about your card getting hit every month. So, but guys, thanks for listening. As always, we appreciate all of your support. Even if you are just a freeloader, even if you're a diehard freeloader, and you will always be a freeloader, we still love you, okay? We still love you. My puppy's barking in the background. I just got a new puppy. All right, guys, I'm going to go spend some time with it. We'll see you guys next week with a brand new True Crime Guys ep. Remember, guys, keep on creeping.
True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder, get murder, get murder. True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder charming.